is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Tuesday, July 18th. Good morning. I'm Perushka Gopal-Kista. Right now, it is mostly cloudy in Ottawa. It's 18 degrees. Here's what's making news right now. Now, breaking news on the inflation rates. The country's inflation rate is at its lowest level in more than 2 years, but consumers are likely not feeling like anything is getting any less expensive. Our senior business editor, Mike Eppel, has the details.
The headline inflation rate's down to 2.8% for June. That's down from 3.4% in May, well below the 8% plus peak we saw last summer. That was when gas prices were at record highs. Well, Stats Canada says the reason price pressures have decelerated or come down quite a bit is because of gas, down by 21% comparable. But you look at other categories, mortgage costs up 30%, grocery costs up more than 9% still. So inflation remains sticky. The core reading of inflation up 3.8%, well above the Bank of Canada's target of 2%. The central bank has warned that price pressures will remain elevated likely for the next 2 years. They're going to be on guard for potentially raising interest rates again. Mike Eppel, City News.
Now, the Confederation line remains shut down today after officials discovered a bearing issue during an inspection yesterday. City News reporter Chris Curries joins us with the latest details.
OC Transpo says they shut down the entire line due to an axle bearing issue, similar to what has occurred in the past. During an inspection, they found a greasy axle and then a bearing with too much play and decided it was best to pull all trains from service so they can be inspected. This happened during the thick of the afternoon rush hour yesterday and means that replacement buses will be running today. Additional staff will be on site to direct commuters, and we're warned that this could be an extended closure. Rideau Transit Group and Alstom are working with OC Transpo on the investigation and plan to offer more details at a media briefing this afternoon. Chris Curry, City News.
Now, taking a look at your weather for today, here's our meteorologist, Jesse Uppel.
Seasonal temperatures for us today, a mix of sun and cloud, but still the risk of some pop-up showers and thunderstorms through the afternoon. We'll have a guaranteed high of 27 degrees. It'll feel closer to 32, and local smoke in the area is possible due to burning wildfires. Partly cloudy skies tonight. We drop down to 16 degrees, and tomorrow, mainly sunshine, dry conditions, 27 degrees with a humidex near 30. Today's guaranteed high, 27.
Right now it's 23 degrees, partly cloudy, feeling more like 29. It's 22 in Smiths Falls. Now, there are calls for a further overhaul of our bail system, this in the wake of several high-profile crimes in the country this year committed by people out on bail. City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney joins us with the details.
Canada's current bail system needs repair.
The Mounties are happy with the federal government's Bill C-48, which, if passed, would create a reverse onus bail for those alleged to reoffend after violent crimes. But Brian Sauvé, the head of the National Police Federation, the union that represents RCMP officers, says more needs to be done, and in a new report has outlined 7 recommendations. They include better data collection from federal and provincial systems and a new bail monitoring system.
These systems should provide real-time information about potential or actual bail breaches, which can be quickly acted upon by authorities.
Sauvé believes reforms like these are possible, but there will be challenges given the feds set the laws for this, but the provinces play a huge role in the application of actually running the bail systems. He's calling on all levels of government to more closely work together to fix the bail system. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
Now, smoke from Canadian wildfires continue to drift south of the border, leaving more than a dozen states under air quality alerts. Now, we get the latest from ABC's Faith Aubrey, and she tells us how it's impacting some Americans as well.
The air quality has gotten so bad here in D.C. that people here are waking up to one of the top 10 worst air quality in any major city across the world. The smoke from those Canadian wildfires continue to spread. 20 states from the Midwest all the way to the Northeast were affected by these air quality alerts. Some places like Cleveland and Pittsburgh were even in the unhealthy category.
Now, some of that pollution going over to cities including Nebraska, Illinois, and Alabama as well. City News Time, it's 10:05. I'm Perushka Gopal-Kister for news anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Connecting you and your community. This is the Sam Laprade Show on City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, good morning, Ottawa. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the Sam Laprade Show. Sam, as you can tell, is off today. She's actually off for a couple of weeks. Derek Fage here, host of Daytime Ottawa on Rogers TV, filling in for Sam. Hope you had a chance to listen into the Talkback Hour and wake up with Rob Snow. Some great content as usual. My goodness, where to start? I think we just start with the news that probably everybody's talking about this morning. All trains on Ottawa's Confederation Line LRT have been stopped, and all stations have been closed because of a bearing issue that was discovered during a routine inspection. And I know you're probably in your car or at work, and you're rolling your eyes thinking, here we go again. That is correct. In a pair of memos to the mayor and councillors, Amilcar first said a routine inspection revealed an issue with a bearing. She later said that an inspector found more grease than there should be on the axles under the train that connect to its wheels. And then a further look at the axle found the bearing play was over the threshold at which it could stay in operation. So basically, bearings are inside these LRT wheels and are both part of what makes them roll and part of the connection between the wheels and train via its axles underneath. Hope you followed me on that one. OC Transpo service suspended until further notice. Train service was halted just before 5 p.m. So basically during rush hour yesterday. Oh my goodness, what a disaster. So R1 buses are replacing LRT service across the entire line from Tunney's Pasture to Blair Station. Mayor Mark Sutcliffe had this to say. He says, it's incredibly frustrating when this happens, but safety and caution must always come first, and we must demand the highest quality standards from the companies manufacturing, maintaining, and fixing the service. With every issue that is identified and fixed by our contractors, we will be one step closer to providing residents with the light rail service they paid for and deserve. It's just so frustrating. I can't even imagine. And I'll be honest with you, I don't take public transit to work. I take my car to work. It's just not convenient for where I live to get to where the station is here. So for those, though, that rely on public transit, I just can't imagine what your frustration is like today. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. As you can imagine, a little bit later on in the show, that will certainly be one of the topics we discuss during Lunch with Derek, which begins after the noon news. What else is making news today? Well, Stats Canada has come out with their new inflation rate, and it tumbled to 2.8% in June. That's putting it within the Bank of Canada's target range for the first time in more than 2 years. This is something we're going to discuss in greater detail throughout the show. StatsCan Consumer Price Index report says the deceleration was broad-based, though lower gasoline prices compared with last year certainly led to the slowdown. However, Canadians continue to pay substantially higher prices for groceries as prices rose 9.1% year over year, slightly faster than in May. So a couple of stories we're following, and as I said, a couple of stories we'll go into more detail with. We do a lot of research on this show, and I like to look at, what's making news and perhaps what's not necessarily making news in a lot of media outlets. And I came across this story by Laura Osman from the Canadian Press. And here is the headline: Pesticide regulation obsolete, protects industry, scientific advisor's resignation. The co-chair of Canada's Scientific Advisory Committee has resigned his post over concerns about a lack of transparency and scientific oversight in pesticide management, something that should be of great interest to all of us. The gentleman's name, and we have reached out to him. We're going to try to get him on the show tomorrow. His name is Dr. Bruce Lamphere, a health sciences professor at Simon University. He stepped down as the co-chair of the Health Canada Scientific Advisory Committee on Pest Control Products on June 27th. In his 3-page resignation letter, Lamphere said he worries the committee and his role as co-chair provides a false sense of security that Health Canada is protecting Canadians from toxic pesticides. He goes on to say in this article, again, by Laura Osman of the Canadian Press, he goes on to say, based on my experience over the past year, I cannot provide that assurance. He wrote in the letter to the Director General of the Pest Management Regulatory Agency, an arm of Health Canada. That committee gives Health Canada independent scientific advice on the health and environmental risks of pesticides and does evaluations for new products and reviews. It launched in July 2022 as part of a reform effort to improve transparency at the regulatory agency and has so far met 5 times since July of 2022. Lamphere said the table of scientists had a more limited role and scope of work than the agency's other advisory board, the Pest Management Advisory Council, which includes members of the pesticide industry. This article I just think is fascinating. And I bring this up because I was talking to some of my colleagues here, and it's been a topic of conversation around dinner table with friends and family. I'm not going to name the business because I don't think, I don't blame the business whatsoever. But there are now businesses, and we have one here in Ottawa, that will come to your backyard and spray your backyard to get rid of mosquitoes. And my understanding is, from people I've spoken to, is basically they come to your backyard, they tell the neighbors that they're doing this, and they suggest that they stay inside during the spraying period and you keep your pets inside during the spraying period, and we'll come and we'll get rid of mosquitoes. My question is, what else is it harming? Like, I imagine something can't just be specific to mosquitoes only. So are pollinators, are bees being affected? Wasps, butterflies? I mean, other insects? Are they being affected? It's difficult to find a lot of information about what's being used in these. And if you're asking people, if you're spraying and you're asking neighbors to stay indoors, obviously it's toxic in one form, and maybe that dissipates over, 12 to 24 hours. I'm not sure how long. But it just got me thinking, is this one of the reasons somebody like this steps down from a very important role as co-chair of Canada's Scientific Advisory Committee, where what stipulations does Health Canada use to decide to let a business come in and do something like this. Now, again, I don't blame the business if Health Canada gives you the go-ahead that you can use whatever you're using. And don't get me wrong, I hate mosquitoes as much as the next person, but they do have a function. I mean, there's a reason that they're there. So again, we are going to try to get Dr. Bruce Lamptey, the co-chair of Canada's Scientific Advisory Committee that just resigned on June 27th. We'll try to get him on the show tomorrow. I have reached out to him. I'm not sure whether he would be willing. I'm not even sure, maybe he has an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement that he can't say a lot about what happens and why he's so disappointed in the lack of transparency and oversight in pesticide management. But again, that was an article that really stood out for me. Another one, very quickly, is this was talked about some time ago, but it looks like it may be coming finally to fruition because Canada has for years forked over, you may not realize, but billions of dollars in subsidies to oil and gas companies, an approach that critics say it really flies in the face of the Liberal government's climate goals. The government is now preparing to release a new policy that will put an end to what they're calling inefficient fossil fuel subsidies, a commitment Canada made more than a decade ago. So this was even before the Liberal government. This pledge, I believe, was made back in 2009. So the federal Environment Minister, Stephen Guilbeault's office, is not confirming when it will release this long-anticipated report and details of which domestic fossil fuel supports it will cut by the end of 2023. So that's coming very, very soon. A spokesman said yesterday they would only say that a framework to define which subsidies to scrap would be coming very, very soon. So this will be interesting because pro-green groups are using sort of a wider definition to conclude public support is substantial on this. There's an environmental defense. It's an organization called Environmental Defense. It says the federal government provided $3.5 billion in direct subsidy programs to oil and gas companies in 2020, with another $13.5 billion in financing through crown corporations like Export Development Canada. So we're talking about substantial amount of taxpayers' money. Earlier this year, the parliamentary budget officer calculated that tax deductions for the oil, gas, and coal sectors reduced federal revenues by around $1.8 billion per year between the years of 2015 and 2019. So, again, something to keep an eye on because we're supposed to find out more information coming up in July. All right, we're going to take a quick break. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. We'll be back with much more right here on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
We all start on different bases, and only some of us make it safely home. Anyone can get stuck on first. Without a clear path to home base, there are over 235,000 Canadians experiencing homelessness every year. Raising the Roof is on a mission to help all those in need find a safe place to call home. With every purchase of a Raising the Roof baseball cap, you are helping us get one step closer to ending homelessness in Canada. Visit raisingtheroof.org to get yours today, because everyone deserves a home base.
I'm Gagwege. My name means everything.
Tom Longboats.
I am Wolf Clan, Onondaga Nation. I've run many different races. I've run to survive and to be free. I've run to win for honor
His people might be lazy, but this one's damn fast.
My people respected our runners, people who carried important messages from village to village.
I need a guide to the next post. Dispatch carrier, sir. I can get you there.
God's sakes, man, slow down. Who do you think I am, Tom Longboat?
No, sir. I am.
Running makes me feel alive. It's everything.
Tom Longboat was the first Indigenous person to win the Boston Marathon. He ran his way to international fame and became an inspiration to generations of athletes.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too. Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
Rogers TV presents a series of original creative stories animated by storytellers for children of all ages. Join us for Ottawa Storytellers.
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here, filling in for Sam. Sam is off for a couple of weeks. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you spending some time with us. You just heard off the top, and of course during our news here, that Statistics Canada says Canada's inflation rate tumbled to 2.8% in June, putting it within the Bank of Canada's target range for the first time in more than 2 years. Here to talk more about it, we are joined by a professor of economics at Concordia University, Moishe Lander. Welcome to the show. Good morning.
Hello.
It's great to have you here. Are you surprised with this number at all, Moishe?
No, I think that it has been forecasted it was going to fall below 3%. It's a nice drop from the 3.4 that we saw the month before, and it shows that the interest rate hikes are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
I mean, there's a lot of questions around that, Moishe, and perhaps you can explain, Professor, a little bit more why it's so important for the Bank of Canada to do that, because people also suffer on the other end as well, right? When it comes to obviously mortgage rates and so forth. How do you what's the argument behind this, and is this the way we should continue to go when it comes to fighting inflation?
Sure. So, the Bank of Canada has a mandate to keep inflation between 1% and 3%. And they let it slide a little bit during COVID, mostly to just let the economy find its way through COVID. But as soon as the restrictions on movement, masking, and things like that were lifted, that's when the gloves came off. And that's what the 18 months had been then to try and rein it in. Inflation only reached 8% last year. I'm saying only because that's low by, a lot of other countries where we know inflation can go higher. And Canadians have lost their minds with just 8% inflation, right? So even just going from 2 to 8 has created a lot of confusion, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration. So the Bank of Canada's lever is usually when inflation goes up, they increase interest rates to try and encourage people to spend less, save more. The thing is, it takes about 18 months before those interest rate hikes really have their effect. And so the interest rate increases last year have now basically worked their way through the economy, and inflation is coming down. And the theory is then that by keeping it low, people aren't losing their minds then, that they accept that prices go up, but just modestly, not crazily. And that's why we're still obsessing over things like grocery bills and mortgage payments, because those have gone up substantially more than 2%. And that's where our obsession is right now.
So the Bank of Canada has, their target range. I'm wondering if maybe the interest rates, how low they went, Professor, is that unrealistic? Should we go back and begin looking at, what is a more realistic interest rate in case of circumstances like this?
Yeah, so the natural long-run interest rate is probably around 4.5% to 5%. So right now, interest rates on, say, lines of credits and things like that are around 7%. So it's a little bit higher than the long-run level, but that's because inflation went higher than what was the acceptable long-run number between 1% and 3%. So the good news for Canadians is that as inflation comes down towards that 2% mid-range number, and as it shows that it's going to be able to stay there, like it's anchored there, then the Bank of Canada is going to have scope to reduce interest rates. And so there is relief coming. But until they show that it is anchored and until Canadians get it through their head that it's going to stay at that 2%, so be modest in your wage demands and things like that, the Bank of Canada needs to keep interest rates high just to make sure that Canadians don't forget we can't let this genie back out of the bottle again.
For sure, but Canadians are hurting right now, right? I mean, you mentioned grocery prices. They rose 9.1% year over year, right? Slightly faster than what we saw in May. And I don't know. I think a lot of people feel like the government and perhaps even the Bank of Canada are out of touch with, everyday Canadians, Professor.
I would push back on that one.
Okay.
The inflation rate is reflecting an increase in the average price of a basket of goods that the typical consumer buys. So it's our human nature that, of course, we are focusing on grocery bills going up 9%, but we're maybe not paying attention to the fact that, for example, gasoline prices have dropped significantly. So if we were focusing on that, we would say that, hey, our cost of living is becoming a little bit easier to manage, right? That average is going up by 2.whatever%. So that's going to mask variation. Mortgage payments have gone up 30%, but that's probably reflecting that a lot of Canadians locked in their mortgage at record lows 18 months ago. And now if they're having to reset their mortgage or if they've had a variable rate mortgage, they've now gone to 20-year highs, right? So this is kind of the cyclical nature of these movements in prices. But the other thing, too, is that the Bank of Canada has been warning Canadians for well more than 18 months that we're over indebted and that we were getting addicted to record low interest rates. And so we're in our last kind of back and forth, we were talking about the idea that interest rates might be a little bit too high right now and they need to be revisited. They will. Right. They're too high right now because they were too low before and we overdid it with the debt and we didn't clean it up, and now that's where we're suffering.
Is it fair to say that many of us are really, quite frankly, irresponsible with the way that we spend? Because if you look at, the debt to income ratio here in this country, like Canadians, I think it's around like $1.85 for every dollar of disposable income, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And so when interest rates are at record low, if you have $1.85 in debt, then the interest that you're paying on that debt at record low interest rates is a very small amount. So out of that dollar of income, maybe you're only having to pay a couple of cents in interest. Don't worry about the principal. I'll get around to it. As long as I cover my interest, I'm good. But all of a sudden, when interest rates jumped, you're now paying 15, 16 cents out of that dollar just to pay interest. And now all of a sudden you're saying, wait a second, I might not even be able to pay the interest, let alone the principal. Jim Flaherty, when he was finance minister years ago, I remember him standing in the House of Commons almost admonishing Canadians like we were children that, grow up, spend less, be more responsible. You can't live on credit. I don't care what the politics are, left, right, who cares? Yeah. It's just the fact that even then we were being told you're being irresponsible. I think it's, again, human nature that, whatever, I'm good. And I don't think that people realize that those record low interest rates were record lows and they weren't sustainable.
Yeah, and it's amazing that we just seem to, as you said, ignore it. Like we're not listening to, what is really some excellent advice, right? And I remember that. Actually, you mentioned Flattery. I remember that. And, a lot of people might have thought that it was sort of condescending, but I think there was some good advice within that. Wish we had more time because this has been a great conversation, Professor Lander. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Anytime.
Really appreciate it. That's Professor Moishlander from Professor of Economics at Concordia University. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show, and you're listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
It was our 35th anniversary. To celebrate, we were on our way to Mama Rosie's, where we had our first date. That's when we heard coming from the radio. So we stopped and listened. It helped us get to safety. So when I think of our anniversary, because now we have even more to celebrate.
Hi, I'm Meg from Fit Over 50, and I'm here with Fit Finley. I want to invite you to join my upcoming workout, which is focused on upper body and lower body stretches. No equipment is required. All you'll need is a chair. Hope to see you there.
Fit Over 50 with Meg, weekday mornings at 8:30 on Rogers TV.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Bum, 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 bum. $20. $20. We're on the line for $20.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
It's Tuesday, July 18th. Good morning. I'm Perushka Gopal-Kester. Right now, 23 degrees in Ottawa, feeling more like 29. It's 22 in Smith Falls. Here's what's making news right now. For the first time in more than 2 years, the inflation rate is in the Bank of Canada's target range. StatsCan reports inflation fell from 3.4% in May to 2.8% in June, and that's mostly thanks to lower gas prices. But no one is getting a break when it comes to buying groceries. That prices rose 9.1% year over year, which was even quicker than they went up back in May. And another full shutdown of the 417 coming at the end of this month. The city says all lanes will close in both directions from Woodruff to Greenbank as crews install a new pedestrian bridge. Now that's part of the O-Train Western extension. The 417 will fully close next Friday and reopen on the morning of Monday, July 31st. City News Time, it's 10:34. I'm Perushka Gopal-Kester. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here filling in for Sam. Sam is taking some well-deserved time off. She's off for a couple of weeks, so I'm sitting here in the hot seat. We're just waiting on a guest to join us, the food professor himself, Sylvain Charlebois, Senior Director of the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University. Wanted to talk to him a little bit more about inflation, but from a different perspective, because reports are that Russia has halted an unprecedented wartime deal yesterday that allows grain to flow from Ukraine to countries in Africa, the Middle East, Asia, where hunger is certainly a growing threat and high food prices have pushed more people into poverty. As a matter of fact, I was following Jeffrey Johnston from the Kingston Whig Standard. He follows situations like this. I follow him, and I highly recommend you follow him on social media as well. And the drought in Africa in particular has been just awful. And so news like this is absolutely going to affect countries in Africa and, of course, as I said, the Middle East and Asia. So how did this come about? Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov announced Russia would suspend the Black Sea Grain Initiative until its demands to get its own agricultural shipments to the world are met. However, that is even though the country has been shipping record amounts of wheat and its fertilizer has also been flowing. So this is what Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov had to say. He said, when the part of the Black Sea deal related to Russia is implemented, Russia will immediately return to the implementation of the deal. Russia has complained that restrictions on shipping and insurance have hampered its exports of food and fertilizer, also critical to the global food chain. So as we know, we've got our inflation data that came in. We just talked about it, came in at 2.8%. The reason, of course, that it went so high, unprecedented fact that we had a global pandemic. And of course, the war in Ukraine is a big effect on that as well. Unfortunately, this is the end of a breakthrough accord that the United Nations and Turkey had brokered last summer to allow food to leave the Black Sea region after Russia invaded its neighbor nearly a year and a half ago. It's hard to imagine it's been a year and a half. The deal provided assurances that ships won't be attacked entering and leaving Ukrainian ports. A separate agreement facilitated the movement of Russian food and fertilizer amid Western sanctions. So this was in a negotiation that, of course, was ongoing for quite some time until the United Nations and Turkey brokered that particular deal. If you're not aware, both of these nations, both Russia and Ukraine, are major global suppliers of wheat, barley, sunflower oil, other affordable food products that developing nations really rely on. So analysts don't expect more than a temporary bump to food commodity prices because places like Russia in itself and Brazil have really ratcheted up wheat and corn exports. The food insecurity, however, is certainly growing in those nations that I mentioned a little bit earlier. So the agreement was renewed for 60 days in May. This is how we got to that point. The agreement was renewed for 60 days in May amid pushback from Russia. In recent months, the amount of food shipped and number of vessels departing Ukraine have plunged, with Russia accused of preventing additional ships from participating. So that's why we find ourselves in this situation. President Zelensky has said that the deal must continue and it could operate without Russian participation. I'm not sure exactly what he meant by that. As you're well aware, I'm sure as listeners, the war in Ukraine sent food commodity prices surging to record highs last year, and of course contributed to a global food crisis also tied to other conflicts, and as I mentioned earlier, the lingering effects of the pandemic. High costs for grain needed for food staples in places like Egypt, Lebanon, Nigeria, that has certainly exacerbated economic challenges and helped push millions more people into poverty and food insecurity. Again, something Jeffrey Johnston from the Kingston Whig Standard has discussed with us on many occasions. People in developing countries are having to spend more of their money on meals. Poorer nations that depend on imported food price in dollars are also spending more as their currencies weaken and they are forced to import more because of climate issues. You've got places like Somalia, Kenya, Morocco. They're struggling with drought. So the Black Sea deal is absolutely critical for the food security of a number of countries. Its loss is really going to compound the problems for those facing high debt levels and climate fallout. That's according to Simon Everett, professor of international trade and economic development at the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland. On top of that, the UN Food and Agriculture Organization said this month that 45 countries need outside food assistance, with high local food prices a driver of worrying levels of hunger in those places. The Black Sea Grain Initiative has allowed, during this period that just ended yesterday, has allowed 3 Ukrainian ports to export about 33 million metric tons of grain and other food to the world, more than half of that to developing nations, and that's according to the Joint Coordination Center in Istanbul. The deal has faced setbacks since it was brokered by the UN and Turkey. Russia briefly pulled out in November before rejoining and then extending the deal. In March and May, by the way, Russia would only extend the deal for 60 days instead of the usual 120. The amount of grain shipped per month fell from a peak of about 4.2 million metric tons in October to 1.3 metric tons in May. So that's the lowest volume since the deal began, and that is a huge shortfall. When you look at, from October at that peak, 4.2 million metric tons to 1.3 metric tons in May, that's an incredible shortfall. Exports expanded in June, however. From that 1.3 million in May, exports expanded in June to a bit over 2 million metric tons, and that was thanks to larger ships able to carry more cargo. Again, asked Monday whether an attack on a bridge connecting the peninsula to Russia, whether that was a factor behind the decision on the grain deal, the Kremlin spokesman said it was not. Peskov went on to say, no, these developments aren't connected. Even before this terror attack, President Putin had declared our stand on that. Ukraine has accused Russia of preventing new ships from joining the work since the end of June, with 29 waiting in the waters off Turkey to join the initiative. Joint inspections meant to ensure vessels only carry grain and not weapons that could help either side have also slowed considerably. Average daily inspections have steadily dropped. So you had a peak of about 11 in October to about 2.3 in June. So that is a huge drop. Ukrainian and U.S. officials have blamed Russia for the slowdowns. Meanwhile, Russia's wheat shipments hit all-time highs following a large harvest. As I said, they really brought that up quite a bit. I believe we do have Sylvain Charlebois on the line now. He's the Senior Director of Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University. Good morning, Sylvain.
Good morning.
How is the food professor this morning?
Very good. We're at the cottage enjoying the rain. Actually, I'm not too far from you. We're in the Laurentians.
Okay.
About an hour and a half away from where you are.
Very nice, very nice. Well, I've given the full breakdown of what this means. Russia halting this unprecedented wartime deal. And how it affects, of course, the countries in Africa, the Middle East, Asia. Is there any effect on us here in North America, Sylvain?
It boils down to prices and how futures are impacted by the conflict, or I should say the uncertainty related to the deal. And so far, we haven't seen much changes on markets. When you look at wheat and corn futures, they haven't been impacted by the Kremlin's decision to leave the pack. In fact, if anything, the bombing of Odessa last night impacted future prices way more than the Kremlin's decision yesterday. So either there are two things going on here. Perhaps the end of the deal was already priced in to the market, or perhaps an extension is in the works, and markets would know that.
Right. We just got Statistics Canada, the inflation rate tumbling to 2.8% in June. That's in that sort of target that the Bank of Canada, their sort of target range for the first time in more than 2 years. But we see still, Sylvain, that Canadians continue to pay substantially higher prices for groceries. We're looking at prices rose 9.1% year over year, slightly faster than in May. What are your thoughts on seeing that 9.1% and how it and why are we seeing that? Why are we not seeing a lowering of that?
Yeah, I know, and a lot of people will ask themselves the same question. When you actually dig deep into the numbers that came out this morning, there's actually less pressure on food prices now, because from May to June, the monthly change actually is at minus 0.1%. So people will focus on the 8.3 or 9.1, but in fact, things are actually getting easier. From April to May, it was at plus 0.9%. So you can see that food inflation is not as high as it used to, and we are expecting that rate to continue to drop. Not food prices, but the rate itself will continue to drop. What is also going on is that while some categories are easing off, others take over, and so fish, bakery, vegetables rates are getting lower. But in June, we saw fruits and meat products become more expensive.
Are you surprised with that? Especially, I think fruit stands out to me as we sort of move into, here in this country, of course, where we can start seeing, growing our own, local fruits and vegetables. And
yep.
Is that a bit of a surprise to you, Sylvain?
Well, I mean, people think, seasonality can actually bring down prices. Not necessarily. If there's strong demand for certain products, and when it comes to June, you have to think about strawberries, for example.
Right.
Well, I mean, retailers will charge for them.
Yes.
That's basically it. And so that's why you have to be careful with how you assess the effect of seasonality overall. The one thing that we keep a close eye on when it comes to fruits and vegetables produce is the American dollar. And our currency has been a non-issue for a very long time. So it really is about seasonality.
Sylvain, really appreciate you taking the time out, especially up there at the cottage. I know it's a rainy day, but you are on vacation, so we appreciate you taking the time. Thanks for joining us here today.
My pleasure. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. That is Sylvain Charlebois, also known as the Food Professor. He's the Senior Director of the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University. Much more to come. This is Derek Fage, filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
I'm Derek Fage, and I encourage you to join me each and every weekday at 2 p.m. for an edition of Daytime Ottawa. We will share with you some fabulous stories, inspirational stories, and of course, recipes from local chefs. We'll tell you about some wonderful musical performances, introduce you to local businesses and charities, and so much more. Join us here on Daytime Ottawa at 2 p.m. weekdays with repeats at 6 and 11 p.m.
Do you have something to share? Let everyone know about your next meeting, your need for volunteers, or your fundraising event on the Rogers TV Community Billboard. Send us your words and we'll bring them to life on Rogers TV and rogerstv.com. When it's time to spread the word, go to rogerstv.com to add your announcement to the Community Billboard.
I'm Wendell Clark with a word about winning. We all know it takes a team effort in any sport and with any challenge. You can be a part of the winning team that shuts out impaired driving. Whether you're out on the town or just hanging out with friends, drink responsibly. Always have a plan for a safe ride home for yourself, your family, and your friends. You'll be helping to shut out impaired driving.
Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive. Drive sober.
Rogers TV presents a series of original creative stories animated by storytellers for children of all ages. Join us for Ottawa Storytellers.
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
Continues on City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here, filling in for Sam. Oh my goodness, it is back. It makes its return. It kicks off tomorrow. It runs through till Sunday. I am, of course, talking about the Ottawa Lebanese Festival presented by Gabriel Pizza. And joining me is the president and CEO of Gabriel Pizza, George Hanna. George, how are you this morning?
Good, Derek. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. Always a pleasure talking to you. You must be excited. Tell us a little bit about your role, George, and why you as a business and a family wanted to be a part of this fantastic festival.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, we are excited to be bringing back the Ottawa Lebanese Festival, 33rd year.
Yeah.
And my role is the chair of the Lebanese Festival. I've been part of the St. Elias community since I was born, and this is just a way to give back to the St. Elias community and to the entire Lebanese community of Ottawa. And this is why I've been chairing it for over 15 years, and have incorporated obviously some forms of sponsorship through Gabriel Pizza, and yeah, I'm proud to do it and very excited for this year.
Have you seen a lot of growth over the years, George?
We've seen extreme growth.
Yeah.
Last year was our record year coming out of the pandemic, and over the years, as the Lebanese cuisine has become more and more popular with everyday Canadians, it brings great growth to the Lebanese Festival, because it's basically home of all the traditional Lebanese cooking, whether it's the tabbouleh, the shawarma, pita, the sage bread, you name it, all types of all of the sweets. We've seen great growth, and we're hoping that, weather pending, obviously, that this year will be another great year for us.
Yeah, look forward to it. And, of course, look forward to the entertainment. You always have great entertainment every year. You've got your CAA festival stage. What can we expect for entertainment this year?
Yes, definitely. On the CAA main stage, we've got your traditional Lebanese singers that come from either Toronto or Montreal or even from Ottawa with the band. We've got them on every day. We've got Carl Wolf that will be performing on the main stage also on Thursday, along with Chrissy Spratt So we're quite excited. Plus, we do our traditional depki lessons, which is a traditional Lebanese dance. And we'll have like DJ, we'll have entertainment from Wednesday to Sunday. And like I said, we just keeping our fingers crossed that the weather cooperates with us and we don't get any smoke or anything like that. And we should be good to go.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and you mentioned Carl Wolf. I just love the guy. I think it goes back probably 18 years since I first met Carl and interviewed him on Daytime Ottawa, and we're so fortunate to see he'll be in studio here actually on Thursday. So looking forward. I haven't seen Carl in I think about 4 or 5 years now, so I'm looking forward to catching up with him. And he's really been a big part of this, George. I mean, for a guy that is incredibly busy and he's had such amazing success, you must be so proud to see that he wants to come back each and every year, George.
Yeah, definitely. Carl's been such a great and amazing supporter of the Ottawa Lebanese Festival. I still remember the first year he came. He was just starting off, parked his car across the street, walked over with his backpack and said, "Hi, I'm Carl. I'm here to perform tonight." We hit it off ever since then. And as he grew, he never said no to the Lebanese Festival, and he just continues to come back, gives his time, does it all for supporting the community and all the causes. And we're proud of him, and we are so looking forward to seeing him again. It should be a great show. He always puts up a great show.
Oh, he does for sure. And people they absolutely adore him. He's so great with fans.
He is. He's awesome.
Let's talk about, of course, lots to do for families. You've got, I understand, you've got your Midway back again this year as well.
Yes, definitely. Lots going on at the Midway. We've got a couple of new rides that they're going to be debuting this year at the Ottawa Lebanese Festival for the Carnival. So that again is on from Wednesday to Sunday. They'll have bracelet days, or you can just buy individual tickets if you want.
Right.
But the Midway brings another element also to the festival, where we're able to have the children come out, have a good time at the Midway, and if the parents just want to sit back and relax, enjoy the entertainment, and grab a bite to eat, they can also do that. So that's been a great draw for us.
Yeah, and you've got a nice 18-plus atmosphere there, right, with the KS on the Keys Lounge, right?
Yes, for sure. That lounge is 18 plus because we actually serve alcohol in the lounge, and again, you're able to sit down, relax, and it's right in front of the main stage, so you're able to sit down, relax, enjoy a couple of drinks, have a bite to eat, and just enjoy the entertainment.
And you continue each and every year to have the St. Elias Cathedral tour, and I've been so fortunate to do that tour a few times, as a matter of fact, for Rogers TV, and what a beautiful spot. What a beautiful cathedral, right?
Whoever hasn't been able to visit the cathedral, I must say, please get down and do it. We're open. The cathedral will be open for tours throughout the festival. It's a magnificent cathedral, especially all of the architecture outside, and all of the icons that have been painted on the walls are just spectacular, and it's really nice to see. Plus the history of St. Elias. I mean, the community is almost going to be 100 years in the next 7 years, so it's
wow.
There's a lot of history.
Yeah, no kidding. And you give back to the community. I know you do as a family, but the Lebanese Festival does as well. You've got a raffle powered by the Ottawa Senators Foundation going on there as well at the festival.
Yeah, we've got the 50-50 that you would normally see at the Ottawa Senator games. We'll be doing the same type of scenario here. We're going to be doing a 50-50 draw. And we're going to do one grand draw at the end of the festival, and lucky winner will take home 50%, and then the rest we usually use for some stuff at the cathedral, or we donate back into the community, whether it's the Ottawa Regional Cancer, Ottawa Heart Institute, CHEO. We have various charities that we give back as a community also, and we support.
Yeah, always appreciate that support. George, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate the time today.
One last thing, Jack.
Yeah, please do.
I got to remind everybody that Millennium Limousine is such a
Yes.
great sponsor, and we've got, they provide shuttles from Canada Post right to the festival grounds, and they pick you up after you're done from the festival, take you back to your car. All you got to do is follow the signs, park at Canada Post, and we do the rest. And it's usually the easiest and best way rather than get a bylaw ticket or something like that, right? So they've been a great sponsor for us and a great provider of the shuttle, and we appreciate that. And we ask everybody to take advantage of it.
Yeah, well said, George. Thanks for adding that in. Appreciate that. George, thanks again. Really appreciate the time.
Thanks, Derek, for having me.
A pleasure. That's George Hanna, President and CEO of Gabriel Pizza, and of course, the chair of the Ottawa Lebanese Festival. And by the way, that free shuttle, there is free shuttle service available from that Canada Post parking lot every day after 4 p.m. With Millennium Limousine Service. Also offers free entry to the festival every day until 5 p.m. The festival open 4 to 11 p.m. Wednesday to Friday and 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. Admission free every day until 5 p.m. Complimentary parking available at Canada Post building with a free shuttle service every 15 minutes. And just go out there and have a great time. They put on such a wonderful festival. We'll be back with more. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Hey everybody, my name is Karen. I'm here with my best friends Shane and Monique. Join us on Rogers TV for Fitness Faction. Every week we're going to take you through a full body workout. We've got strength training, we've got cardio, we've got HIIT. Ladies, let's get back into it.
I think we've got 10 more skaters. Let's go.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Bum, 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 bum. $20. $20. We're on the line for $20.
Is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Tuesday, July 18th. Good morning. I'm Perushka Gopal-Kester. Right now in Ottawa, it's mostly cloudy, 24 degrees, feeling more like 29 in Ottawa. Smiths Falls, it's 24. Here's what's making news right now. Now, for the first time in about 2 years, the inflation rate is in the Bank of Canada's target range. StatsCan reporting inflation fell from 3.4% in May to 2.8% in June, mostly thanks to lower gas prices. But no one is getting a break when it comes to buying groceries. Grocery prices rose 9.1% year over year, which was even quicker than they went up in May. Now, even the Premier of Ontario weighing in on inflation and as well as the cost of living in one of the most expensive cities in the country, and that's Toronto. He held a news conference about an hour ago talking about minimum wage, and our Caitlin Lee joins us now with the latest.
Ford says the real problem here is supply and demand when it comes to housing. He says they're already increasing the minimum wage in Ontario in October to $16.55. He says it's one of the highest minimum wages in the country. But as you just heard, it's still more than $17 less than what the report says is required to afford a one-bedroom in Toronto.
Everyone starts somewhere. And to be frank, I'm sure there's quite a few people on $16.50. But what I'm hearing from business owners, they can't get anyone, no matter if it's $18 or $20. Is it a good thing? We have low unemployment.
Ford was in Niagara region to talk about a training program for those under the age of 30 to help them get better paying tech jobs. Reporting live, Caitlin Lee, City News.
Now, here at home, if you rely on transit, it's probably best to get a bit early today as the Confederation line remains completely shut down for another day. With the details now, here's City News reporter Chris Curries.
It's going to be a replacement bus kind of day and possibly week as OC Transpo made the decision to shut down the entire line due to an issue discovered during an inspection. They say during a routine 50,000-kilometer check, they discovered excess grease in an axle. They then investigated further and discovered excess bearing play, which was beyond their threshold for operation. They then shut down the entire line out of an abundance of caution and plan to inspect every vehicle axle because this is an issue they have dealt with in the past. OC Transpo says they're working with Radio Transit Group and Alstom on determining the root cause and will have more to say in a briefing this afternoon. Chris Curry, City News.
Now, that update will be coming at 3 p.m. OC Transpo expected to give us an update on the Confederation line, and we will carry that for you live when it happens at 3 p.m. City News time, it's 11:06. I'm Perushka Gopal-Kista. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Sam is off for a couple of weeks. Derek Fage here, host of Daytime Auto on Rogers TV, filling in for Sam. Just a reminder, giving away some tickets in just a little bit to the Kempville Live Music Festival. But before we get to that, a very important topic. As federal parties craft the scope of a possible inquiry into foreign interference, we wanted to speak to Canada's media literacy charity, Media Smarts, to talk about what more can be done to get that sort of media literate populace that is so incredibly important. Dr. Cara Brisson-Boivin, Director of Research with Media Smarts, joins us. Good morning. How are you today, Cara?
Morning. Thanks for having me.
So, let's just first of all talk about, what you're looking at as a group within your research. I imagine you're seeing more and more, disinformation, misinformation, however you want to put it. Is it becoming more prevalent in this country?
Yeah, I think there are some real challenges as Canadians try to navigate the information ecosystem that we do online. And I think one of the challenges that we're seeing are that more and more people are turning to social platforms as their primary source of information, especially for news and politics. And in that way, it makes it all the more important that we are all sort of leaning on the reflex to, check the sources of our information. And that includes, going to the original source of an information and piece of information and verifying if that source has a good track record. Those can be things that are really difficult to do in the context of, social platforms that are designed to keep us on those spaces, engaged in those spaces, when the sort of best practices of verifying information often require that we leave the space to, as I said, search for the original source and verify that source.
Yeah, and do you think there's a bit of a misunderstanding or perhaps not even, a realization at all of how things work on the internet, on social media, Cara, whereas, when you start looking into something, you sort of end up, because of that artificial intelligence that kind of runs in the background. All of a sudden, that story that you first clicked on, and it's not a reliable source, you sort of get stuck in this loop. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think it really just doubles down on the importance of digital media literacy so that users can understand the way in which the online environment shapes their online experiences. You know, you were talking about algorithmic design and the way that content is recommended and fed, to us, the way that our engagement with that content, whether it's something that we think may be as sort of passive as a like, that also, feeds algorithmic systems and changes the information ecosystem that we're all navigating in certain ways. And so, as I say, digital media literacy, the ability to, access, use, understand, engage technology or with technology in critical ways is just so imperative now. I think it's an absolute necessity to being able to, participate in any kind of way, but especially, civically, and again, to be able to feel like we can navigate, the online world in safe and informed ways.
What do you feel is the responsibility for governments and even schools in this kind of situation?
Well, I think, it's really imperative that as a country, we, make digital media literacy a priority. Nordic countries, small European countries, especially those countries along the border with Russia, have done this because they are, prioritizing digital media literacy, especially as a response to disinformation. It's something we just don't have yet in Canada. Education is a provincial and territorial jurisdiction, so we have 13 different provinces and territories navigating this issue differently, and we don't yet have digital media literacy and core curriculum anywhere in the country. That said, I also don't think we can sort of shoulder, the education sector with the burden of digital media literacy or leave it sort of squarely there. We need a national commitment, a national strategy for digital media literacy in the country so that all people in Canada across the life course have access to digital media literacy resources and education. And again, we just don't have that leadership or that strategy in place in Canada at a national level. And so for those reasons, we are falling behind some of those Nordic and other countries that are doing that.
Just by the way, I want to remind everyone we're speaking to Dr. Cara Brisson-Boivin, Director of Research at Media Smarts. Can you give perhaps, Cara, some examples of the type of misinformation, disinformation that we're seeing that end up, going viral online? Or are there any sort of concrete examples you can give?
Sure. Well, I'll start by saying, the difference as we see it sort of between mis and disinformation. Misinformation is false information that can be shared unintentionally. Disinformation tends to be false information that is shared, with intent or purpose.
Right.
Misinformation may be something that, somebody stumbled upon about, in some cases we see this as images, right? They're images of natural disasters that can be taken out of context. So the image itself is true, but, someone might be saying, this is a tornado that happened in Ottawa, and it is a tornado, but it did not happen in Ottawa. For example, it may have happened in the southern states. And that was, accidentally shared by someone who didn't do the kind of homework we all need to do before sharing that content. Disinformation, again, false information shared for, perhaps a political purpose. We saw this in the case of Russia and Ukraine. We saw this in the context of COVID. Often, mis or disinformation about, vaccines, for example. But interestingly, from an education perspective, the distinction isn't all that important between mis and disinformation, because we want folks to take, one of the four approaches to telling if something's true online. Find that original source, check if the source has a good track record, check other sources to see if they're also confirming the story or piece of information. And lastly, rely on experts, fact checkers, folks who are debunking the story, resources like Snopes.com. They already exist, and we can lean into them to see if something is true or not.
Are you encouraged at all as an organization that we could eventually see Canadian schools focus more on media literacy as part of its curriculum down the road?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the great hopes for me is in the work that we do with youth and educators is how much young people are self-aware, they're reflexive about their need for digital media literacy. They are very vocal about their want to sort of learn and equip themselves with digital media literacy skills. So I think that is amazing. And we know lots of educators, across the country who are committed to doing this. I also know that these educators need to be supported, and, having curriculum goals would help them do that. And then I also know that, as enthusiastic as young people and educators are, again, digital media literacy, authentication and verification being one example of that, isn't something we can, or learn in a one-off course in, secondary school and be done with. This is something we all need to be constantly revisiting and sort of reskilling ourselves, especially because of the speed with which the, tech, world and the online world changes.
Yeah, I mean, the conspiracy theories that I come across, it's a head scratcher. It just absolutely amazes me. But as I said earlier, and you said it as well, once you go down sort of a hole, sometimes you can get easily convinced because a lot of this information is very convincing. Dr. Brisson-Boivin, thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate the time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Anytime. That is Dr. Cara Brisson-Boivin, Director of Research with Media Smarts. As promised, we're going to give away some tickets. That's right. The Kemptville Live Music Festival is returning. It begins this Thursday, July 20th. It is running until Sunday, July 23rd, with some great acts, including Colin James, Blue Rodeo, and Melissa Etheridge as some of the headliners. You could win, because we're giving away a pair of tickets each and every day this week on the Sam Laprade Show. You could win a pair of tickets to Saturday, July 22nd. That features Melissa Etheridge and Dawn Tyler Watson. Full festival lineup, by the way, and to buy tickets, you can visit KemptvilleLiveMusicFestival.com. But you can call in now at 613-750-1310. We're going to take caller number 7 will be our winner. Again, the number 613-750-1310. Give us a call right now. We're taking caller number 7 for those tickets. Again, Saturday, July 22nd. Headliner is Melissa Etheridge, and leading into that, Dawn Tyler Watson. Of course, some more acts as well. You can spend your day there at the festival and enjoy some excellent live music. 613-750-1310. We'll take caller number 7. We'll be back to announce our winner right after this. This is Derek Fage, filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit StopTrackTragedies.ca.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
If you're facing Alzheimer's disease or dementia, you don't have to do it alone. There are people and resources that can help, and we'll connect you to them. Alzheimer's Society of Ontario. Our connections matter.
I'm not special. Cancer happens to people all the time. I take 1 mile at a time, 26 miles a day. I want to set an example that'll never be forgotten. Sometimes, it feels endless. But the pain I feel is nothing. I've seen little kids in so much pain. Somewhere, the hurting must stop.
Terry Fox ran more than halfway across Canada to raise money for cancer research. Every Every year, millions of people around the world continue the marathon of hope in his name.
Today, I helped a parent feed their family by connecting them to a food program.
Today, I helped someone connect with mental health supports.
Today, I helped a couple struggling to pay their bills access financial aid.
Every day, 211 navigators connect Canadians to critical government and community programs and services.
211. Help starts here.
Rogers TV presents a series of original creative stories animated by storytellers for children of all ages. Join us for Ottawa Storytellers.
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Sam off for the next couple of weeks. Derek Fage here from Rogers TV filling in for Sam, and I would like to start off by saying a big congratulations. We have a winner to those pair of tickets. Saturday, July 22nd. Headliner is Melissa Etheridge. Our winner is Jacob Castleman. Jacob, thank you so much. Thank you so much for calling in. Thanks to all of you for calling in. Jacob, enjoy that. That's a great lineup that day. Of course, you can find the entire festival lineup at KempvilleLiveMusicFestival.com. Now, if you didn't win today, not to worry. We'll do this again tomorrow at some point on the Sam Laprade Show between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. We'll give away another pair of tickets to that Saturday, July 22nd show. Again, if you don't win, you can always buy your tickets at KempvilleLiveMusicFestival.ca. Well, as you know, all trains on Ottawa's Confederation Line, LRT, have been stopped. All stations closed because of a bearing issue that was discovered during routine inspection. We've been talking about this in the news all morning. Talked about it off the top. And joining us from Ottawa Transit Riders is Laura Shantz to talk more about this. Good morning, Laura. How are you?
I'm great. Good morning, Derek.
Good morning. Great to have you. Great to catch up with you again. For those, I'm sure you've been following this very closely, Laura. What is the issue with this bearing? Is this one of the same issues we saw previously?
You know, it is kind of we're doing a repeat episode now. We're kind of getting into rerun season with LRT problems, and what we've seen is the rail staff reported that they found extra grease around a bearing. And, you know, I've got family who are in the trades, and they let me know that extra grease often means it's a bearing about to fail or in the process of failing. Okay. These things are supposed to last a couple years in service in a train. And what we're seeing is that's not happening, because we know that we did huge replacements in 2021. And, you know, we're less than 2 years later, and already we're seeing wholesale, we got to replace all these bearings. We've got to get, you know, inspections, we got to get replacements. And now we're pulling all the trains, we're inspecting them all, which, you know, is obviously thumbs up for safety, but thumbs down when it comes to getting people around this city.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I can't even imagine. I was saying earlier off the top of the show today that because of where I live and where the station's located, I drive to work. But for those that, you know, rely on public transportation to get to and from work or anywhere, just to your groceries, recreation, it doesn't matter what it is, Laura, the frustration, it must be at a boiling point by this time.
Oh, absolutely. It's a real challenge for people. You know, if you're going to if you need to get around, it doesn't really matter what the externalities are, what else is going on. You need to get from point A to point B. So we have a lot of folks in the city who are fortunate enough to have, you know, a bit of flexibility in their work arrangements. If they can't make it, you know, if they have to go in the office, if they can't make it today, well, they can go tomorrow instead. But for a lot of people, the train is how they get around. It is their accessible way around. And we know that the frequency with which R1 buses are running is not a good replacement. We're talking off-peak hours. We're talking once every 10 minutes. Okay. On peak hours, we're talking once every 5. But now you think about someone who's using a wheelchair or someone who's pushing a stroller and needs to get on that train. Or on that bus, if you're not at that first stop, there's not going to be a spot for you. Or even if you are at that first stop, people might just push past you and take up all the space.
How reliable, when it comes to this kind of thing, when we go into that R1 bus replacement, maybe you don't have the answer to this, Laura, but when it goes into that, how reliable is it to find out, when your bus is coming and the timing of it? I know that there was a lot of frustration with the app that was being used. Has there been any positive encouragement with the apps that are available to people to use?
There's not like a fixed schedule with the R1. It's just we're told once every 5 minutes or once every 10. We're not given your bus will be here at 11:25. And as those buses fill up, we know it takes longer for people to get on and off when there's a lot of people on that bus, and it will slow down the service. So it's really tricky to predict. And if you're someone who is on the clock, you're trying to get somewhere and you've got to be there urgently, like let's say you have a medical appointment that is at a certain time, and if you miss it, you're going to have to rebook. Or if you're on your way to work, close enough, and we hope there's space for you on this bus, isn't good enough for people. We need to make sure that we can meet the service demand. We're really lucky that we're in the middle of summer right now, and a lot of people are not heading to school or have, some vacation plans that reduce their demands for transit. But we know it is a very important service for people in the city, and that people are being impacted. And, a new app is great, but if the service is only advertised as once every 5 minutes or once every 10, that's still not giving us the precision of when do we need to show up, or do we just stand around until a bus appears, and will there be space on it?
Laura, what do you make of the response from the city? Are you happy with what you've heard from the city?
I'm happy that we've had a clear identification of the problem, that we're not just told that there's been an issue at an inspection, I'm very happy with the level of detail that we know it's, again, a bearing issue. I'm very happy that came out right away, because in previous shutdowns, we haven't had that clear information. We're just told we're looking into it, or more information will come. I'm happy with that. I'm a little frustrated with, the message around R1, because I'm not certain that the level of service that they're offering is fully adequate. I know, coming from Vanier to downtown this morning, I ended up biking to take some pressure off the system. And as I'm biking up that lovely Cummings Bridge, I'm seeing buses 12 and 15 rolling by, packed to the gills with folks who, these buses normally aren't that full. My guess is that they probably tried a different route because the R1 was really packed. I'm not even sure what to say anymore, Laura. I mean, you must feel the same way. It's just to the point where, I know it's difficult to deal with the Rideau Transit Group and Allstar and try to get, money back, and because then you get into legal issues and there's these non-disclosure agreements, and you get to the point where you just want to scrap everything and tell this company, hey, you know what, you sold us a lemon, take it all back, and give us something that works. There's definitely that temptation sometimes. There's definitely that feeling, but we signed this $2+ billion deal, and now we're kind of stuck in a bit of an unhappy marriage, it seems. And the real, the thing that really gets me, though, is it's the fact that people who have no other options to get around are the ones who get hit every single time. I'm very lucky. I'm able-bodied. I can bike into downtown. You've got a car. You can get to work with, your own way without relying on OC Transpo. But there's a lot of people who absolutely need that service, and they're the ones who take it on the chin every single time. And that gets to me because, people in the city deserve better. They're paying taxes just like all the rest of us, and they're the ones who are being let down the most.
Those are the top of my priority. And then the second thing that concerns me is because there's so much frustration, there's no reliability whatsoever, that people are going to turn away from it and to try to get them back because, when we get into habits, right? It's difficult to get somebody after they go from public transit to being in their car and to get them back to public transit again. It's the perfect storm of of just being, just letting so many people down. It's so incredibly frustrating.
And we've already seen a lot of that. You're absolutely right. And if I have the resources to buy a car and pay for parking, and, of course that's more expensive than transit. But if I get to roll downtown, in my air-conditioned car, without jostling with others for space, without worrying, will my bus or will my train show up and get me where I need to go, then of course, people are logical. They'll make a choice that's logical for them.
Yeah.
And if we want to win them over to transit, we need to be delivering a high quality and incredibly consistent product every single time.
Couldn't agree more, Laura. Laura, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Have a great one.
Thank you. That's Laura Shantz from the Ottawa Transit Riders Group. We got lots more coming up. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
This is a brain in urgent need of mental health care. But because 3 out of every 4 Indigenous people experience racism in healthcare, she may not get the help she needs. Become an ally. Rise above racism in healthcare.
I'm Julian Armour from Music and Beyond. Join us for a new show this spring on Rogers called Music and Beyond Presents.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Bum, 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 bum. $20. $20. We're on the line for $20.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 101.1 everywhere.
It's Tuesday, July 18th. Good morning. I'm Perushka Gopal-Kista. Right now, 24 degrees in Ottawa, mostly cloudy. Feeling more like 29 in Smith Falls. It's also 24. Here's what's making news right now. For the first time in more than 2 years, the inflation rate is in the Bank of Canada's target range. StatsCan reporting that inflation fell from 3.4% in May to 2.8% in June. And this is mostly because of lower gas prices. But no one is getting a break when it comes to buying groceries. Grocery prices rose 9.1% year over year, which was even quicker than they went up back in May. Now it's week 3 for striking Hydro Ottawa workers as they have yet to come to an agreement. The union representing Hydro, which is IBEW 636, said they were going to return to the bargaining table yesterday, but no word on whether a new offer was reached. They were also set to discuss safety concerns and a fair contract yesterday too. Now the head of Hydro, Bryce Conrad, saying the company values the work of their employees and are committed to working with the union to come to a balanced and responsible agreement. City News Time, it's 11:33. I'm Perushka Gopal-Kista. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Sam Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here from Rogers TV, filling in for Sam. There's some incredible news. Wake Up with Rob Snow. Rob talked about this earlier on his show today, and this is about another experimental Alzheimer's drug that they say can modestly slow patients' inevitable worsening by about 4 to 7 months. That's the research that is being reported. This just came out yesterday. It is some incredible news. Here to talk more about it, I am joined by Christina Sturgiu-Damon. She is the Senior Director of Provincial Programs and Partnerships with the Alzheimer's Society of Ontario. Good morning, Christina.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming. I mean, this is certainly exciting times because this is, I believe, the second drug that is showing some promise. But Christina, before we get to that, just for those that perhaps aren't familiar enough with Alzheimer's and what it is, and perhaps some of the causes, even if we know any whatsoever, maybe you could just break it down for us before we get to this exciting news.
Sure, absolutely. So Alzheimer's disease is a type of dementia that is most common, and so it accounts for 60 to 80% of all dementia cases. And dementia is really a set of symptoms, and the symptoms can include things like memory difficulties, impaired thinking ability, language difficulties, so you might not be able to think of the word that you'd like to say, and so your conversations might be altered. There can be disorientation in time and space, so you might not quite recall how to get to the grocery store, a place that you've gone weekly for years, as an example. There may be changes in judgment or personality, and so forth. And in this case, Alzheimer's disease is the cause, and that's with respect to these treatments that we're talking about today. The thought is that there are proteins in the brain that are causing these symptoms and ultimately the disease progression, and the protein is referred to as amyloid protein, and so those proteins exist, and then these symptoms ensue over time.
I imagine the research has really ramped up in recent years, Christina, because, I think just thinking myself going back 25 years ago, you didn't hear as much about research. Are you encouraged with the amount of research you've seen?
We are extremely encouraged, certainly when we think about within the context of Ontario, there are, 260,000 Ontarians living with dementia today, and this number is expected to triple over the next 30 years. And if we think about it sort of in our everyday life, this essentially means that nearly a third of all adults in our province right now have a close relative living with dementia. And so, in thinking about these projections, having hope and thinking about the fact that there are treatments on the horizon, in the context that there is no cure and there are currently no treatments existing in Canada, this is huge news.
So the drug is called donanemab, I believe. The company is Eli Lilly and Company, and they're seeking, seeking U.S. Food and Drug Administration approval. What do you know of this experimental drug so far, Christina?
So back in May of this year, Eli Lilly, they did provide some high-level results that were unpublished. But yesterday, as you mentioned, they did release full results that broadly reinforced the positive outcomes. So essentially what their results are saying is that the cognitive decline that is associated with mild cognitive impairment, which is essentially like a precursor that before someone has Alzheimer's disease, it reduced the cognitive decline by 35% versus placebo, which is essentially those folks within the trial that did not receive treatment. The other piece that was really interesting to learn is that the results also showed that reductions in this cognitive decline were actually greater in the trial participants with this mild cognitive impairment versus those with Alzheimer's disease, which is more advanced than mild cognitive impairment. And that decline that was experienced was slowed by 60%, which is huge.
I'm not sure the name of the other drug because there is another one, Leqembi, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Leqembi, it's also known as lecanemab, and that was a treatment that through ASI, it's the first treatment ever to receive full approval from the FDA, and that one was submitted to Health Canada this year in May, and so they're currently assessing safety.
How long does it take for an assessment like that? Are you familiar?
It can take a couple of years. I mean, certainly we hope that with Health Canada's review that they will accelerate it to the best of their ability, knowing the current context. They do look at all of the data. They do talk with people living with the disease and their families to really, consider all of the variables. And then ideally, hopefully, we'll see an approval as soon as possible.
Are you aware of any side effects? Has that been reported at all, Christina?
Certainly. So with treatments like these, there are certainly always side effects, and some of them are serious, and this does also hold true for donanemab. The trial results did reveal that there is this presence of what they call ARIA, which is area-related imaging abnormalities, which is essentially when they look at the brain through an imaging process like an MRI, they see things like brain bleeding and swelling. And this was present in 36.8 of the trial participants, which is more than double of those that received the placebo.
Now, I mean, you talked about it, dementia's very interesting because there are so many different levels, right, of dementia, sort of on the spectrum, I guess you could say, on it. Do we know which patients yet may benefit more than others?
So certainly Alzheimer's disease, one type of dementia, it is a terminal illness. And so certainly all of those with Alzheimer's will be looking to see if they are eligible. And certainly physicians will, need to discern the risk versus benefit. The one interesting result that came out of the clinical trials yesterday, the donanemab shows that they only were able to reduce cognitive decline by 6% versus placebo group when the participants also had another protein that's associated with Alzheimer's called tau within their system. So that would be where they would need to make a determination if there is a presence of tau, whether or not it makes sense to administer this treatment.
Do we know what age group was was there an age group? Was there a demographic at all that the study enrolled?
So this treatment is intended for people who have mild cognitive impairment. So some of those symptoms that I mentioned earlier related to Alzheimer's disease, this would be where they're experiencing some of those symptoms, but they're really able to participate in their daily life with hardly any interference and with complete independence. And so these treatments are intended for that stage, the mild cognitive impairment stage, or, when they're in those earlier stages. So this is really critical to think about when we think about early detection and treatment, which is essential for people in order to be eligible and to receive this in a timely fashion once approved, assuming.
Okay, just put that aside for a moment and let's talk about the Alzheimer's Society of Ontario, because obviously you provide a lot of support for patients and certainly their families. Let's talk a little bit about the type of support that you can provide, Christina.
Sure. So the Alzheimer's Society is a federation. Essentially, we have 26 societies across Ontario, and we provide supports to both people living with dementia themselves, of any sort of dementia, and their care partners. And we provide information about what to expect. We provide supports and things like counseling and coping strategies, and also referrals to programs that we offer, as well as referrals to services outside of our society, so things like day program and respite and rec therapy and so forth.
Where does your funding come from, Christina?
So we have a mixed model of funding. The societies are health service providers, so we do receive funding from the Ministry of Health. We also have other programs where we receive funding from the Ministry for Seniors and Accessibility, but we also are fundraisers, and so we do endeavor to fundraise through a variety of different events, including, our walk every year, which also helps to augment, the cost of offering programs that are not covered by the various ministries. And our services are offered to clients at no cost, and in some cases, like day program, at a very minimal cost.
Christina, how do you, separate sort of what would be, I guess, most would call it, normal memory loss as we start to, as we begin to, age, and then when it should become a situation where we should be concerned? How do we separate those two?
So certainly dementia is not a normal part of aging. So yes, there will be brain changes over time as you get older, and you may notice subtle little things, but it's where you notice that those subtle little things are becoming more frequent and greater in severity. And oftentimes it's when not just your own person, yourself, you're noticing, wait a minute, something, I feel like something might be going on, but I'm not quite sure. But you often have family members or friends or your employer or, others in your circle who might start to also pick up on, difficulties that the person is having. And so when those things are happening, it's then really important to reach out to one's physician or healthcare provider to start to, investigate, what they may be facing. And is it a dementia that is treatable, something like perhaps your thyroid isn't working as well as it should, or if it's a type of irreversible terminal dementia like Alzheimer's disease.
Right. Christina, really appreciate the time today. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Sam Laprade Show.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you as well. That's Christina Sturgio-Damon. She is the Senior Director of Provincial Programs and Partnerships at the Alzheimer Society of Ontario. To find out more information, you can visit alzheimer.ca. You can find out more about dementia, what type of help and support is available to you, and certainly how to take action. And, just information like this, right? With this this new study, this experimental Alzheimer's drug, certainly a lot to be excited about. So we'll continue to follow this story certainly on City News. We'll be back with more. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
I'm Derek Fage, and I encourage you to join me each and every weekday at 2 p.m. for an edition of Daytime Ottawa. We will share with you some fabulous stories, inspirational stories, and of course, recipes from local chefs. We'll tell you about some wonderful musical performances, introduce you to local businesses and charities, and so much more. Join us here on Daytime Ottawa at 2 p.m. weekdays with repeats at 6 and 11 p.m.
It isn't the heavy trays that make the job difficult, or the fast pace you need to keep up. It's not working another double because someone called in sick. What makes the job tough is the moment you realize a customer has had enough, and you have to make that decision not to overserve. Refusing service isn't personal, it's the law. We know it's not easy, but we're counting on you to keep us all safe. Thank you, servers, for doing the tough job.
Hi, I'm Paula Roy, and it's my pleasure to welcome you back into my kitchen for another season of Paula Roy's Favorite Foods. My approach to food is pretty straightforward. Fancy is fine, but when you're in a time crunch or have a really hungry and patient family to feed, I say simple recipes made with wholesome ingredients that you probably have on hand are the best. And that's exactly what you'll find on Paula Roy's Favorite Foods on Rogers TV.
Everybody knows not to drink and drive, but some people still think it's okay to take drugs and drive. Police have the authority, the ability, and the tools to determine if drivers are impaired by legal or illegal drugs. And because drug-impaired drivers can pose just as great a risk as drunk drivers, they face the same penalties, like the loss of their driver's license, a criminal record, fines, and more. A message from the RCMP, the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, and Arrive Alive, Drive Sober.
Rogers TV presents a series of original creative stories animated by storytellers for children of all ages. Join us for Ottawa Storytellers.
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Sam is off. Derek Fage here from Rogers TV filling in. And always a pleasure having our next guest on the show. And we get to celebrate an important anniversary with the Historical Society of Ottawa with Ben Wise. Good morning, Ben. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Derek. And as you say, I represent the Historical Society of Ottawa, and every week we explore different aspects of Ottawa history. But today I'd like to talk about us, the Historical Society of Ottawa, because we are celebrating our 125th anniversary this summer. We've been telling Ottawa's great stories for a century and a quarter, and 12 days from now we're throwing a big party, and everyone's invited for our 125th birthday.
I absolutely love it. So how did, Ben, you probably know, how did the society get started? Who was behind this?
Well, we were founded in June of 1898. Now, Derek, I want to just put this into a bit of perspective. If you were to put together a book about all the history that has happened in the 2 centuries since Ottawa was founded as Bytown, most of that history hadn't even happened yet when our Historical Society first started talking about Ottawa's past. Our early members were barely a generation away from the workers and engineers who built the Rideau Canal and the first settlers who came to the Ottawa Valley. Our early members held monthly talks, just like we do today. In fact, they held their talks at the original Carnegie Public Library at Metcalfe and Laurier when it first opened in the early 1900s, and it's there on that same spot in the updated library building where we carry on our monthly speaker series over a century later. Now, I should point out, Derek, that here we are 2 men celebrating a historical society that was originally founded by women exclusively as a women's organization, no men allowed. It wasn't until the 1950s that our society shortened its name from the Women's Canadian Historical Society of Ottawa to what it is now, simply the Historical Society of Ottawa, and first started welcoming men into the organization. Now, to get back to your question, our first patron was Lady Aberdeen, the forward-thinking wife of the Governor-General at the time. Lady Aberdeen saw a great opportunity for the women of Canada to push the envelope of Victorian-era gender expectations at the time. Many say she was one of Canada's first feminists, decades before most people would have even heard of that word. Lady Aberdeen pushed to form the Victorian Order of Nurses here in Ottawa, the National Council of Women here in Ottawa, and the May Court Club here in Ottawa. And she was our first patron as well. Our original membership was definitely made up of women from the upper echelons of Ottawa society. Our Historical Society's founding members included wives of business leaders, Supreme Court justices, and politicians of all stripes. Zoe Laurier, Lady Laurier, wife of Prime Minister Wilfrid Laurier, was a founding member. A few years later, the wife of the Prime Minister, Robert Borden, was an honorary president. And for a decade and a half near the beginning, Margaret Ahern was our president. Margaret had family connections to J.R. Booth, the lumber baron, and her husband was the legendary Thomas Ahern, who with Warren Soper had expanded electric lighting and introduced electric streetcars to Ottawa. These are the people we consider to be history now, but of course they were writing about an earlier history. Margaret Ahern was the driving force that led to our society founding the Bytown Museum in 1917, as well as the installation of that statue of Samuel de Champlain that's normally at Nepean Point. Our Historical Society's volunteers went on to run the Bytown Museum for over 8 decades. For almost a century, the Bytown Museum was our main focus. But our society's founders also had an almost obsessive determination to resurrect and repair the reputation of Colonel John By. Even though only a few decades had passed by the time our society was founded in 1898, Colonel By had become almost a forgotten figure. I don't know if you know, Derek, but when the Rideau Canal was completed, Colonel By was recalled and chastised by the British Parliament for overspending his budget on a 6-year project by about $200,000.
200,000. But imagine what that was worth back then. I mean, that's an incredible amount of money.
Yeah, it was about 19% overrun, which would be well within bounds today, but back in the political frame of mind, it caused a stir. Bai ended up dying a broken man just a few years later, and his reputation was in ruins. The ladies of the Historical Society decided this wasn't right, and this was a man who should be remembered and revered for his achievements. This became a top priority for our society for many, many decades. The statue of Colonel Bai in Majors Hill Park that looks over the canal, and also the old stone building where the Historical Society of Ottawa moved the Bytown Museum in the 50s, was commissioned and installed by the Historical Society of Ottawa in the 1970s. And to this day, the Historical Society of Ottawa pays annually for the upkeep of Colonel Bai's gravesite in England.
Really? I had no idea.
But one of the things we realize today, Derek, is that over the last 125 years, our society might have spent too much time revering the past and might have sometimes been too quick to put figures on pedestals. Today, our goal is to tell the stories of the past in the balanced manner that history deserves, and to realize that very few, probably even including you and me, can truly ever stand the test of time of being put on a pedestal. We also recognize that for much of the past 125 years, our society's focus has been limited to the brief couple of centuries since Philemon Wright arrived and Colonel Bai built the canal. Like our schools and society in general, we virtually ignored the thousands of years of important Indigenous history that was long before Europeans settled in the Ottawa Valley. So we've been working hard to rectify that, to make sure our stories are told from diverse perspectives, and to expand beyond that narrow lens that our founders would have had at the beginning and meant much of our membership since. So today, through our website, our publications, the activities and research we support, the work we do at the schools, our twice-monthly speaker series, and our social media presence, we really try to make sure all sides of the stories are told. So we have a lot to celebrate this summer, but we have a lot of new work to do too.
Ben, have you and you know the society, have you I imagine you reached out to Indigenous groups to get information, because you know to find out more history, because as you said, you know, thousands of years of history, some of that must be difficult to, you know, to do the research and to find out more.
Oh, absolutely. And if you take a look at our speaker series, if you take a look at our Facebook page, we've done a lot of work. We've done a lot of partnerships with the folks at Pequawkin and Kitigan-Zibi, and we've got a lot of content. We've given a lot of opportunity for some diverse voices. We have a talk coming up in September about the story of Chief Pinessi, whose land it was that Ottawa sits on today. So we've done a lot of work in those regards, as well as work with other groups like Black History Ottawa. So our big party that I mentioned is on Sunday, July 30th at 2 o'clock. It's at the Beechwood Cemetery, which itself is historic. There's going to be lots of songs, stories, a walking tour, refreshment, door prizes, special guests. All the information is on our website and Facebook page. I'd love a chance to meet in person some of the folks who enjoy this segment every week and follow our Facebook page. And there'll also be a chance to chat with folks like James Powell, Phil Jenkins, and Albert Dumont that are important in the historical community.
Yeah, absolutely. And is that, do you have to pre-register for that?
Yeah, so if they go to our Facebook or our website, you'll see that there's a pre-registration link.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Always a pleasure having you, Ben. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Derek.
We'll
Have
certainly
a great day.
thank you as well, and we'll catch up to the Historical Society of Ottawa again next week, as we do each and every week. And that website, by the way, Historical Society Ottawa.ca. You can become a member up there. There's also some volunteer opportunities available up there, and you can read all about any of the activities and ongoing things and events that are coming up as well. We'll be back with more. It's Lunch with Derek coming up. We got a few topics to discuss with our guests today. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
It was John's graduation. We were so proud. We all got together for a picnic. That's when we heard coming from the radio. So we stopped and we listened. It helped us get to safety. That's why when I think of John, because now he has a real future to look forward to.
I'm Meg from Fit Over 50, and I'm here with Fit Finley. I want to invite you to join my upcoming workout, which is focused on upper body and lower body stretches. No equipment is required. All you'll need is a chair. Hope to see you there.
Fit Over 50 with Meg, weekday mornings at 8:30 on Rogers TV.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Bum, 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 bum. $20. $20. We're on the line for $20.
Is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Tuesday, July 18th. Good afternoon. I'm Perushka Gopal-Kista. Right now, 24 degrees in Ottawa, feeling more like 29. It's also 24 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news right now. Now, the Confederation line remains shut down again today after officials discovering a bearing issue during an inspection yesterday afternoon. OC Transpo saying they shut down the entire line because of an axle bearing issue, which did happen before. Now, during the inspection, they found a greasy axle and then a bearing with too much play and decided it was best to pull all the trains from service so it can be inspected. Now, a city councillor is a little concerned at the level of replacement buses in the city's fleet. We get those details now from City News reporter Chris Curries.
During peak periods, OC Transpo plans to run 28 R1 replacement buses, but River Ward Councillor Riley Brockington is not convinced that that's enough when you think of the frequency and the capacity of the trains on the Confederation line.
If you're going to have a replacement bus service, you need to have a replacement bus service that runs on the same frequency and has the same capacity to take those people than the train service does.
He tells the Wake Up with Rob Snow show he'd like to see even more buses, but admits that the fleet size of OC Transpo in general just is not large enough to make that happen. Chris Curry, City News.
Now, we are expected to get an update this afternoon at 3 p.m. Transit officials expected to provide an update on the light rail, and we will carry that for you as it happens. Now, some good news for those traveling through Pearson Airport. It looks like traffic congestion is easing up a little bit. The Greater Toronto Airport Authority is saying that things are looking up. With the details, here's City's Momin Qureshi.
We got an update a few months ago from the GTAA saying things were improving, and now we're getting another one saying things are getting even better, according to new data.
On average, 91% of passengers are clearing security checkpoint lines in less than 15 minutes. This is a dramatic increase from last year. There are a considerable percentage of passengers as well that are clearing customs and entering the country with less than 7 minutes processing time and wait times. This is a substantial improvement since last summer.
The GTAA also says last year at this time, about 30% of flights were arriving and departing on time. That's now over 70%, so seeing substantial increases there. They say they hired about 10,000 people between last year and this year across all the departments inside the airport, so steadily improving. There is another long weekend coming in about a week and a half, but they say there is still ways to go to get to where they want to be in terms of all their metrics. Reporting live, Momin Qureshi, City News.
Now, taking a look at your weather for today, here's our meteorologist, Jesse Uppel.
We'll hang on to a mix of sun and cloud across the area for the afternoon. The risk of some scattered showers and thunderstorms as well. 27 degrees will feel like 32 once you factor in the humidity and a high UV index. Now, local smoke due to burning wildfires remains in the forecast. Low air quality at times is possible, and we'll hang on to the chance of some isolated showers later this evening. Through the overnight, we clear out. 16 degrees will be the overnight low, and Wednesday, sunshine, 27 degrees will feel like 30. today. Today's guaranteed high, 27.
Right now, 25 degrees, partly cloudy, feeling more like 30. In Smiths Falls, it's 25. StatsCan says the country's inflation rate tumbled to 2.8% in June, putting it within the Bank of Canada's target range for the first time in more than 2 years. A BMO economist saying the report was mixed, though, because less measures of inflation have not eased as much.
Very, very mixed overall. I mean, some good news, some bad news, I guess, depending on which way you want to read it. You can take it any way, but enough encouraging signs, I think, to make the bank a little bit more comfortable on the margin, at least, with the direction that inflation is headed.
Now, the Bank of Canada raised interest rates earlier this month because it expects inflation to remain high for much longer. City News Time, it's 12:04. I'm Perushka Gopal-Kister for news. Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Connecting you and your community. This is the Sam Laprade Show on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here from Rogers TV, filling in for Sam. Boy, oh boy, we got lots to talk about. You know, the beauty about the city of Ottawa is it just kind of hands you the news sometimes, right? It just it just happens that way. When you live in a political town in particular, it certainly happens that way. Usually it is lunch with Sam. Today it is lunch with Derek, and pulling up a chair at the table, I am joined by Laura Peck, senior partner at Transform Leaders. Good afternoon, Laura.
Good afternoon from beautiful Nova Scotia.
Wonderful to have you here. My goodness, Nova Scotia. How's the summer been out there, Laura?
Really wonderful.
Magnificent.
It's I love Ottawa, but it's great to get away from the smoke and the politics and all of it.
I understand. And joining us is Ottawa-based consultant and Liberal strategist Greg McEachern. Good afternoon, Greg.
Good afternoon, and I just got a gut punch of jealousy hearing that Laura's in my native Nova Scotia.
I thought you'd feel that way. As soon as she mentioned that, I remembered that's
I just went, oh.
That's where you're from, eh, Greg? Lots of great memories from there.
Yeah, exactly. Lucky Laura.
Yeah, for sure. Can't wait to make my way out there. As a matter of fact, my son just moved to Halifax with his girlfriend, so my wife and I are looking forward to paying them a visit in a few months when they get settled down. But we got to talk about some things a little bit closer to home here in Ottawa. I'm sure you've both heard about this. Mayor Mark Sutcliffe sparked a bit of a debate last week when he said he'd like to see the NCC open the road along the Rideau Canal to vehicles because of the traffic impacts and few people, from his observation, using Queen Elizabeth Driveway for active transportation. And this active transportation, this is something that the NCC decided to do during the pandemic, and they've carried it over, and that is allowing access to, simply cyclists and pedestrians and so on for 12 hours a day. That is 7 days a week. As far as, callers into the talkback hour yesterday with David Smith, most of them were agreeing with Mayor Sutcliffe. I wonder, Laura, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, certainly in the mayoralty election, the people have spoken, and most of them do agree with the mayor's views on this. The NCC wants to close traffic along Queen Elizabeth Driveway, but he is thinking of, the vast numbers of people have to get easily through the city, and it would put more traffic into the side streets on the Glebe and Bank Street also. There's emergency vehicles as well as cyclists have got beautiful pathways. They've got the entire driveway on the weekends, so you have to make sure that people are safe and that emergency vehicles can get through. So to completely close it off, that would make it difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah, and Greg, the argument with the NCC, they're saying, well, you know what, the Queen Elizabeth driveway was never meant as a commuter road. It was always meant as, a scenic route and for tourists to go and enjoy. And the argument behind that is that, things change. Populations grow in cities, and perhaps it used to be a scenic route, but now because we've got a greater amount of people using our roads, maybe it has turned into a commuter route for good reason. So what are your thoughts, Greg?
Well, let me tell you about the Airport Parkway. It's a road that's supposed to take you to the airport, but we've all sat in traffic there because it's been used to get to other parts of Ottawa, to other parts of the suburb. And, unless you have someone standing at the corner of, Pretoria and Queen Elizabeth taking tickets and saying, are you doing this for scenic reasons? Well, good luck. Transportation is like water. It's going to find a way. And I don't agree with Mayor Sutcliffe on everything. And I think he needs to be visible on a lot more items. But on this one, I agree with him. And again, a bit of a regional bias here. I live in Old Ottawa East. We have major construction going on, as people who use Greenfield to get to Sandy Hill or to the highway will know. We have a bridge at Pretoria that is frequently raised for traffic on the Rideau Canal. And unlike the section of the Queen Elizabeth driveway that goes from Pretoria to, say, Laurier, where you have the alternative of using Elgin Street, you really don't have the same capacity if you're heading south. There's nothing that goes through the glebe kind of the same way unless you go all the way over to Bank Street. And I can tell you it really makes for a lot of congestion here. And I live like a block from Colonel By. During the pandemic, that was closed. I was doing an hour walk every morning. I had Colonel By, if I was walking on it, to myself for many days. And people were not using it. So, again, Derek, I have a regional bias, a neighborhood bias on this.
Right.
I want to see some data. My anecdotal information would be, people are not using this because there is two paths on either side of the canal that people can use. So I was happy to see the section that goes from Pretoria to Bank or Little Italy, wherever you're going, open, because it's a huge amount of transportation that's suddenly not available.
Greg, is it fair to say you're open to having it closed on weekends, but open on during the week?
Absolutely, with this caveat. We want Lansdowne to succeed. And, there's soccer is getting huge audiences now. The Red Blacks won at home. Yay! We need to find a way to get to Lansdowne. And this is one of the things I've talked to Sam before. They want more towers at Lansdowne, but there's only two ways in, and they're both two-lane streets, Bank and Queen Elizabeth. And Queen Elizabeth is shut down a lot. So we need a transit plan if we're going to have further growth at Lansdowne. And when we're closing Queen Elizabeth, that doesn't sound like much of a plan.
Right. On a leadership perspective, Laura, there's been criticism in particular from City Councillor Jeff Leeper in he said he'd like to clarify that, the mayor's views are not, those of Ottawa City Council or their policy, and he's calling it inappropriate that he's using his platform not only as mayor but as a board member. Obviously, he doesn't have any sway necessarily, but he does have a voice with the NCC. Sitting on that, he's a non-voting member of the NCC's board of directors. Do you think he went about this the wrong way by coming out and just publicly stating his observation instead of perhaps bringing this to members of council?
Well, we just heard Greg say, and he has credibility because he lives in that area, that he was glad that the mayor did speak out on this issue. Most people do want to hear what their mayor has to say on this particular issue. And so, you can choose to not listen to it, or, the gentleman you spoke of, that person has his right to say he shouldn't have. However, most people do want to know what the mayor of Ottawa has to say.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that. I've heard some criticism saying, yeah, it's okay to have an opinion, but maybe it's not an observation you should necessarily publicly state before I guess that you sit around the council table, but it is what it is. Let's move on to the next one because, my goodness, Laura, here we go again. The Ottawa's light rail line closed until further notice due to its latest problems with, it looks like, some bearing problems, problems with the connections between the trains and their wheels. The frustration just continues to mount, Laura.
Yeah, it is another ball bearing problem. I guess it's prevention to, why they can't inspect this at night. I don't know, but boy, they are taking an abundance of caution, of course, and they're closing before an accident occurs. Wow, have we ever endured a lot of problems with this? They need to do, and I guess they do, regular overnight inspections. But, even from Nova Scotia, I am reading about this problem. And for people that really wanted to depend on that kind of travel, they must have to have plan B and C every time they go out the door.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, I don't use public transit at the moment for my commute to work. It's just not.
I'd like to.
Well, yeah, but it's just not convenient as far as the type of bus situation that I would have to get here. It's not reliable, Greg. Again, you just seem to keep. First of all. One of our guests, Laura Shantz, a little bit earlier in the show said, the most vulnerable people are so greatly affected by this going down. There are people that, work minimum wage jobs and perhaps a little above that count on public transit. And here we go again, Greg.
Yeah, and I'm going to circle back to my earlier comments about the mayor. The mayor tweeted about this a little after 6 o'clock last night, and there's been nothing since. And that tweet says he just learned of it, and the news was a couple hours old then. So, I want to say to Mayor Sutcliffe, I don't think Mayor Watson would have been reelected. The anger was pretty strong. He would have had a hell of a hard job being reelected. The anger is super strong around the LRT. And, I'm seeing people on social media say, you know what, we have to start over. We got to rip this up. Now, that's dangerous. That's really dangerous, and that's really expensive. Like you, Derek, I'm about a 20, 25-minute walk from my office. It would take me 10 minutes to get to the closest LRT station, so it's not worth it for me. But during Blues Fest this year, I used it twice a night. I had people come with me that had never been on before. People liked it. It worked.
Right.
But we went to a station that couldn't open on Canada Day because apparently it wasn't safe. And if you look at council minutes from last October, 2 high-rises were approved for that area around LeBreton.
Right.
So it feels like there is a huge disconnect with information on this. And, I really encourage the mayor that, an 18-hour-old tweet is not going to suffice on this. People are really ticked off. We're talking out of both sides of our mouths here. Around the Queen Elizabeth driveway or on this. We are saying we need people to come back downtown Ottawa. Well, how the heck do they do that?
Yeah, and I guess the only defense I would have about the Canada Day situation is you're talking about probably, I don't know how many, I don't have the number, but oftentimes you're getting Canada Day crowds and, close to 100,000 people. And I think that's the reason that they shut that down. The good news is, with 30,000 people that were coming out of Blues Fest on many nights, we didn't have a problem. So you kind of have an unprecedented one-day celebration that they were being very cautious about. I wondered why they wouldn't just, give it a go. But Rob Snow and I, when Go ahead, Greg.
And it wasn't communicated super well around.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. Communication, as you mentioned, with the mayor in this particular situation, and communication and in that particular situation could have been much, much better. I'm going to take a quick break here. We've got more to talk about. We'll come back after the break with Laura Peck and Greg McEachern here on Lunch with Derek. I am filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
All I wanted was to see a movie. One down, please.
I can't sell downstairs tickets to you people.
How dare they? I could afford to buy the more expensive ticket. I run my own business. But they refused to take my money. They left me there all night. On what charge? They said I didn't pay the theater tax. But it was really about color.
Sister Desmond, appeal this conviction and your community will stand behind you.
Do you have any idea what this will do to us?
So what are you going to do? Make it right.
Viola Desmond's case inspired Nova Scotia's civil rights movement. She was pardoned 63 years later based on the injustice of her conviction.
My husband is a wonderful man and a great father when he's not drinking. I'm so angry he chooses alcohol over us. If he really loved us, he'd stop drinking, right? My counselor suggested I try Al-Anon. I didn't understand why. I'm not the one with the problem, but I'm glad I went. Do you worry about someone's drinking? You are not alone. Al-Anon or Alateen can help. Call 866-200-0033 or visit alanon.org/hope.
Rogers TV presents a series of original creative stories animated by storytellers for children of all ages. Join us for Ottawa Storytellers.
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here, filling in for Sam. We continue our second half of Lunch with Derek, joined by senior partner at Transform Leaders, Laura Peck, and Ottawa-based consultant and Liberal strategist, Greg McEachern. I was trying to find attendance, actually, at Canada Day celebrations this year, and I can't actually find a firm number. It just says tens of thousands attend Canada Day events. So I have nothing to go on. I know, we've reached, the over 50,000 mark plenty of times over the years, but it's unusual that we wouldn't be able to find
them. We
numbers.
stayed home with our little Canada flag and, did our own little thing, but we didn't move, really.
Yeah.
The neighborhood, that's it.
Greg, did you get out to Canada Day celebrations this year?
You know what? One of the first years that I've not gone. I love living in Ottawa. I love, when the fly pass happened, was don't think happened this year. But I got beckoned to my brother's cottage about 2 hours south of here.
Ah, yes.
And so, my nieces needed someone to swim with there. Come on.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, that's a great way to celebrate as well. I've been doing that too. What would you say there, Laura?
He's lifeguarding.
Yes, of course. Everyone needs their uncle there helping out.
My days on the beaches of Inverness County in Quebec, many years and pounds ago.
Let's move on to our next topic, and StatsCan. Inflation rate numbers out this morning, and that tumbled to 2.8% in June. That puts it within the Bank of Canada's target range for the first time in more than 2 years. But at the same time, Canadians still continuing to, pay substantially higher prices for groceries as prices rose 9.1% year over year. That is slightly faster than in May. And Laura, I think when you look at that 9.1% for groceries, a lot of people, when you speak of, things like carbon tax and so on, they're wondering if the leadership in this country is perhaps a bit out of touch with the average Canadian. What do you make of that?
It's definitely a good news, bad news story. Inflation has tumbled down, but with the price of food, everybody has to eat. And if you go to the grocery store and the expense of your food bill is going up, that is one thing everybody has to do. So there's no relief in sight. The same with mortgage rates. They're going up and up all the time. And so you hear of people, whatever they signed up for, it's gone up and up. So the prices are getting higher and higher. I got a lot of empathy with people. It's really tough.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess a lot of people look towards the federal government, Greg, to help out with that kind of increase. Is there anything they can really, I mean, certainly they can speak to the Bank of Canada in a way, but as far as grocery prices go, what could the federal government do?
Well, they did do the special GST rebate,
yes,
which is exactly what you want to do during an inflationary time. The province of Saskatchewan gave $500 to every person over the age of 18. That's just putting more money in the economy. And frankly, someone like me, I don't need that. I'd love to have another $500, but realistically, that should be going to families that are, making, a certain amount. This is an item that's really easy to get angry about. And, the opposition says the federal government caused inflation, so I guess they've now caused it to go down. And, that's silly. But the government, federal, provincial, has to be aware of the impact. Laura's 100% right on the grocery side of this, and comparatively, Canada's doing pretty well. Looking at the numbers, I haven't seen the numbers for the UK yet for June, but in May they were at 8.6%. And so, comparatively, Canada is doing very well. But tell that to somebody who's trying to feed a family right now. Right. Laura and I both have, in our careers, advised, senior corporate officials. And there is a tendency sometimes in corporations to be risk averse and to feel that things are going to go away. I would be very careful for the supermarkets right now because I think they are ripe for disruption. The chains are very, very big, and people are angry, and they're looking for other ways to spend their money. And if the supermarket chains aren't careful, they could be very much surprised about what happens and what new opportunities exist for somebody who wants to find a way to buy food in a more cheaper and efficient way. Yeah,
and interestingly, council just made an amendment, right, to the zoning rules, right, the bylaw around zoning rules, where you can, now you're going to see, I believe it's about 135 different zones in the city of Ottawa would actually be able to open up a food retail store of some sort, like a supermarket, a butcher shop, bakery, delicatessen, farmers market, and so forth. So that could make a difference. Maybe we could see this return to the mom and pop style of grocery store. Oftentimes they have to charge a little bit more, but the more competition, certainly the better, and making sure that people can get to a grocery store by foot, with that idea of the walkable 15-minute neighborhood. I think there's some positive things to look at as far as that amendment goes. We've run out of time, but always appreciate you both joining us. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us today.
Thanks,
Nice
Eric.
to
Have a
talk
great
to
day.
you.
Nice to talk to you too, Laura, and you as well, Greg. That's Laura Peck, Senior Partner at Transform Leaders, and Greg McEachern, Ottawa-based consultant and Liberal strategist. We've got lots more coming up. As a matter of fact, Ariel Troster, City Councillor for Somerset Ward, coming up after the break to discuss an article that caught my eye in no other than the Ottawa Business Journal. I'll tell you about a new development proposed at the junction of Little Italy, Hintonburg, and Chinatown. And it's a proposal that I believe our next guest, Somerset Ward Councillor Ariel Troster, is probably excited about. We'll talk to you more about that after the break. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
Hey, man. Want to go for a ride?
Sure. Toss me a life jacket.
I'm gonna need this. I'm gonna need this.
Nope.
I'm gonna need this. And this.
I think we should stay here. I thought you used to play ball.
Do you have something to share? Let everyone know about your next meeting, your need for volunteers, or your fundraising event on the Rogers TV Community Billboard. Send us your words and we'll bring them to life on Rogers TV and rogerstv.com. When it's time to spread the word, go to rogerstv.com to add your announcement to the Community Billboard.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Bum, 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 bum. $20. $20. We're on the line for $20.
Number 1 for local news, traffic, and weather for Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News 1011 everywhere.
It's Tuesday, July 18th. Good afternoon. I'm Perushka Gopal-Kista. Right now in Ottawa, it's 25 degrees, partly cloudy, feeling more like 30 degrees. Here's what's making news right now. The inflation rate fell to 2.8% in June from 3.4% in May. Now, although we got a break at the gas pumps, Stats Canada reports that grocery prices went up 9.1% from 1 year ago. Now it's week 3 for striking Hydro Ottawa workers as they have yet to come to an agreement. The union representing Hydro workers saying they were going to return to the bargaining table yesterday, but no word on whether a new offer was presented. Now they were also set to discuss things like safety concerns and a fair contract yesterday too. The head of Hydro Ottawa, Bryce Conrad, saying the company values the work of their employees and they're committed to working with the union to come to a balanced and responsible agreement. And the Confederation line remains out of service again today because of an axle bearing issues. R1 buses are running in place from Tunney's to Blair, and staff will be on site to help. Now, during an inspection yesterday afternoon, transit officials found a greasy axle and bearing with too much play and decided to shut down service from yesterday. Now, at 3 this afternoon, transit officials will provide an update on this shutdown, and City News will carry that live for you as it happens. City News time, it's 12:32. I'm Perushka Gopal-Kista for news anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The Business Lunch on City News, brought to you by the Ottawa Business Journal.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Derek Fage here filling in for Sam. And speaking of the Ottawa Business Journal, an excellent article in the Ottawa Business Journal around, this is by Charlie Senek, by the way, article dated July the 17th about a new development proposed at junction of Little Italy, Hintonburg, and Chinatown, and looks very, very promising. Here to tell us more about it and her thoughts and perspective on it, I'm joined by City Councillor for Somerset Ward, Ariel Troster. Ariel, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Thanks so much for taking the time today. You're quoted in this article, and by everything I'm reading, you seem quite excited. For those that aren't familiar with what this new development, what the proposal is, can you kind of walk us through?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a really exciting project, both for Centertown and Hintonburg residents, but for the whole city. It really has the potential to be incredible, both on this piece of land and on the piece of land adjacent that is now owned by Ottawa Community Housing. There's going to be hundreds of new affordable homes. There's also going to be a massive expansion of recreational gym space, which is desperately needed in downtown Ottawa. And we're also looking at the possibility of putting an arts hub on the space. And of course, a location for French Public School, Louise Arbour, from the French Public Board, which are currently in a really inadequate building. But, you know, I do have concerns, and I keep telling everybody that the drawing that we see online is not the final version. One of the issues that the community is really focused in on is the fact that in the rendering that's currently up on the Engage Ottawa website, it has Louise Arbour Public School in the middle of what is now Plouffe Park, which is a park space that is highly valued by the community. So I've been working with city staff and with community groups and with parents from the school to try to figure out a way to ensure that we don't have to make that trade-off between park space and a school, because we need both in our neighborhood, absolutely.
So what would the option be then for the school? Is there any ideas that have been floated yet?
Yeah, so we've had some great conversations. First of all, a lot of the parents who have kids in the school also use the park. You know, in Centertown West, according to the Ottawa Neighborhood Study, we only have 13.9% tree coverage, and they say you need 30 to 40% to help mitigate climate change. But also, Louise Arbour Public School, they're currently housed in a old school that the Catholic Board stopped using. They have to run the water in that school for 30 minutes to get the lead out of the pipes before the kids come in. And there's holes in the ceilings. It's in really bad shape. So I had a great conversation with city staff and with local community organizations, and then we had a meeting bringing the parents from the school together with some of the community folks who were concerned about the park, and we're working together as much as possible. First of all, we have 4 school boards in the city, and we have empty buildings. So the question is, can we move the kids to a temporary location that's better than where they are now? So that's one thing we're looking at.
And then rebuild on that same site. Would that be the idea?
Well, I mean, I think all of the Tetris pieces on that site can move. You know, there's transportation considerations. We need enough space, but the community has made it very clear that they don't want to lose Plouffe Park, and neither do I. It's really, really important. But one of the challenges is that the school needs to be built first, because those kids need the school immediately. Right. So it will likely be the first thing that's built on that site if it goes there. So, you know, we're still having those conversations. What's really great is to see parents who are also community members themselves, united with the community association. And as part of this consultation process, we're asking people to fill out the survey on Engage Ottawa, to tell us the things that are important to you. But absolutely every element of the current plan is absolutely needed in our community. The question is just, where those puzzle pieces go on the actual site.
So you mentioned Ottawa Community Housing is involved, so they're collaborating, right, with the city on the affordable housing portion of that Somerset Street West development, right? For
sure, and they have the adjacent property called Gladstone Lands, which is right next door. So what we're going to see is lots of new young families coming to the community, which is fantastic. And as it is, we have parents from Centertown that are driving their kids to Nepean Sportsplex to have access to recreation program because we need it so badly downtown. So, the families that are going to be living nearby there, and then also there's new housing going at Gladstone and Rochester in the Rochester Heights community. They need parks. They need recreational space, and kids in the French public system need a school. So I am confident we can make it all work. I'm very excited about this project, but I just want people to know that we need you to go fill out the survey online and tell us what's important to you.
And that's engage.ottawa.ca, right?
Engage.ottawa.ca, and you can also email my office.
Okay.
Or there's an email which is 1010somerset@ottawa.ca. I mean, this really is a city building project. It's very rare that you have a piece of land that's city-owned, that's right by a brand new LRT station, the Corso Italia station, which will open soon, that's in the heart of downtown, that can meet so many community needs. And we want to make sure it's a space where everybody feels welcome, and where we're not making what sounds like a very tough trade-off that I don't think is necessary. I don't think it should be a question of a school versus a park. I think we can have both. We just have to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, and Councillor Troster, one thing that excites me, and you touched on, is that you're going to have families here. Like, we are talking about over 330 units that are going to offer, a diverse range, because I think what's often missing when it comes to, affordable apartment rentals is those 3 and 4 bedroom apartments, and that's something we will see here, right?
Absolutely, and also in the Ottawa Community Housing development right next door. And that is so important. So every time a developer comes to me with a project for more density in the core, what I'm seeing is a lot of bachelors, a lot of very small 1 bedrooms, sometimes a few small 2 bedrooms. But what I heard when I was knocking on thousands of doors, and what I hear from my neighbors, is people want to stay in these communities. They need a little bit more space. And the thing is, there are so many big cities where entire families live very happily in apartments, and then they use city-based amenities. So I love the idea of having an integrated hub that will have recreation space, park space, housing, and other amenities right nearby on Pressman and on Somerset Street. It really is very exciting. We want families to move to the core. We want them to stay in the core.
And my understanding, too, correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor, to offset some of the costs, there will be private condos built in this.
Yeah, there'll be a small portion of the land where there will be private homes. The majority of it will be for public use, but that's typically what we will do on a site this big, is some of the sale of those private homes will help fund the public amenities that are on the site, but all of the recreational pieces will be City of Ottawa pieces. We're also looking at putting a large daycare in there, and I know a lot of arts groups have approached us about the possibility of an arts hub. So it's going to be a really happening place. It's going to take quite a few years to build up, but it really has so much potential and would just bring a ton of much needed amenities to a community that's already really packed with people.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm incredibly excited. The only thing that I'm not excited about is that the city development portion on the site, they're saying in this article, won't begin for 5 to 10 years. It seems like quite a long time to wait for like even the beginning of construction.
Well, I mean, the idea is to build the school first because it's
of course. That's in a year or two, right? That they'd like to get that started?
I mean, I think we're looking at 10 years for the entire development from beginning to end, maybe a little bit longer than that. But it is really complicated. And we're looking at doing some innovative things, what kind of amenities can we stack on top, on top or below city-owned buildings, new park space, new gym space. It's going to be a really large recreational facility. We don't have anything like that in our downtown core right now. There's going to be a basketball court, like a soccer field, just all the things that people are asking for. So I'm really excited about this. It will take time, but because we do have a little time, I think we can have a little sober second thought and say, okay, how do we make this work without having to have either a school or Plouffe Park? I really do think we can have both. So that's why I keep telling people the drawings that you see online, they're not final. Please fill out the survey. Please email about your priorities. And then we send it back to city staff who work with our office to say, okay, how do we come up with a better iteration of this? But, I think we're getting close. And with any piece of land like this, right in the core of downtown, there's a lot of people who want to be involved, a lot of organizations that want to be on there. But the priority has been public space, affordable housing, recreational amenities.
Councillor, how well served is that area with something like, grocery stores, butcher shop, delicatessen? We were talking about this yesterday on the show, and how we're trying to, see certainly more of that with, of course, the amendment, right? The zoning bylaw amendment, that's a huge opportunity in this city for some of those sort of grocery or food deserts, as people are terming them. There will be commercial space here. So would there be an opportunity to perhaps get something like a grocery store, even if it's a mom and pop kind of grocer?
There might be, although just a couple of blocks away, the owners of one of the Italian banquet halls.
Yes.
Cut the half. Yeah, they cut their mercados. They cut their space in half because people aren't having giant weddings anymore during the pandemic, and they turned it into a really wonderful green grocer with a deli counter and a bakery. So, I think you need a certain density of people living in a particular area to multiply the number of grocery stores. And literally everyone in the neighborhood who lives in an apartment building dreams of having that farm boy or that, that grocery store downstairs. I have a lot of seniors who live near Bay and Slater that are just dying for something to go in near the Lion LRT station, and hopefully it will soon. So the more people we get living downtown, the more amenities we get. It's kind of a chicken or egg thing.
Were you encouraged? Sorry to cut you. Were you encouraged by that amendment? I imagined you were.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Although we our zoning is a lot more flexible downtown. I think,
right, of course.
I think it's going to be a real change for the suburban wards mixed-use development. I think it's a good thing. There's some councilors like Glenn Gower. I know he brought an amendment when we were at Housing Planning and Housing Committee to allow for some mixed use on a development that was going in Stittsville. I mean, I think we're wanting to see it everywhere. People are working hybrid, partially from home. They want that walkable community in their own area. They want to be able to support local businesses. So, I actually think the zoning bylaw amendment is going to represent a good change, but definitely more of a change for some of the more bedroom communities. And I think those of us who live downtown can help the rest of the city understand how great it can be to have that vitality right in your own neighborhood.
Yeah, agreed. While I have you, thoughts on Confederation line. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. It's more of a frustration. But I guess it's perhaps are you happy with the response that you've heard with the way they're going about this? I know you're just as, I'm sure, frustrated as the rest of us.
Yeah, I mean, it is really frustrating, and this is a system that was purchased and installed before I was elected. I remain really critical of this, of P3 arrangements. We're seeing how hard it is to wrestle control of this project, but I do think that management of OC Transpo has really repaired these sort of day-to-day operations with the maintenance contractor. And in this case, they're doing their due diligence. They noticed that there was a problem with the bearing, so they decided to preemptively stop the trains to make that fix so that we can avoid something like another derailment in the future. It still remains to be seen whether these are the right trains that we should have purchased in the first place. Of course, that was a decision made before I was elected. I really do understand people's frustration, but I would rather see them notice a problem and move quickly to switch to R1 service than to risk another situation that could be dangerous for people.
Yeah. Always appreciate the time. Really, thank you so much for joining us again here on the Sam Laprade Show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. That's Councillor Ariel Troster, Councillor for Somerset Ward, joining us on the show. And certainly encourage you to go have a look at that design that we were discussing. Again, engage.ottawa.ca/1010-Somerset. If you go on there, and actually you can find it just with engage.ottawa.ca, and there is they want to hear from you. So they want some feedback. You can review the community hub hub concept plan there. There is a survey available there as well on the proposed elements of the concept plan. As Councillor Troster just mentioned, many in the community worried about taking up some of that park space, or most of that park space, to put the new school in there. So again, obj.ca to check out that new development proposed for the Little Italy, Hintonburg, Chinatown area. We'll be back with more. This is Derek Fage filling in on the Sam Laprade Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Hello, I'm Jim Deeks, host of Canada Files. I hope you'll join me each week for interesting and informative discussions with some of Canada's most impressive people.
I'm Derek Fage, and I encourage you to join me each and every weekday at 2 p.m. for an edition of Daytime Ottawa. We will share with you some fabulous stories, inspirational stories, and of course, recipes from local chefs. We'll tell you about some wonderful musical performances, introduce you to local businesses and charities, and so much more. Join us here on Daytime Ottawa at 2 p.m. weekdays, with repeats at 6 and 11 p.m.
This is a man's heart, a heart in desperate need of medical attention. But because 78% of Indigenous people experience racism in healthcare, he may not get the help he needs. Become an ally. Rise above racism in healthcare.
Hey everybody, my name is Karen. I'm here with my best friends Shane and Monique. Join us on Rogers TV for Fitness Faction. Every week we're going to take you through a full body workout. We've got strength training, we've got cardio, we've got HIIT. Ladies, let's get back into it.
I think we've got 10 more skaters. Let's go.
The regulars, the guys who keep this place in business. Last week, they had something to celebrate. Jason had just finished university. So they toasted his profs, his TAs, his old roommates. Well, they toasted just about everyone. But I worry about and take care of my guys. So even when I know they're not driving, sometimes that means bringing them a little surprise. And then they had a drink to me.
Brought to you by Smart Serve Ontario and Arrive Alive, Drive Sober.
Rogers TV presents a series of original creative stories animated by storytellers for children of all ages. Join us for Ottawa Storytellers.
It's a new season of The New Fly Fisher on Rogers TV.
The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Sam Laprade Show. Sam is off. Derek Fage here filling in for the next couple of weeks. Well, we got the inflation numbers, as you know, earlier today. Certainly, good news with 2.8%. The bad news is looking at grocery prices and inflation at 9.1%, and certainly has many people in our community and communities right across the country certainly struggling to put food on the table. But there's a really great story that's happening in Eastern Ontario in the town of Van Cleek Hill, and here to tell us more about it, I'm joined by Nicole Jalbert, president of Arcs Harvest. Good afternoon, Nicole.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. You have to tell me the inspiration behind this. Tell me about sort of the birth of Arcs Harvest.
ARC's harvest started in the times where COVID was a big deal, prevalent in the area, and we're just looking for a way to connect with people and just let them know that they're not alone. Any emotion that they're feeling was a common emotion. Everyone at the time just wasn't certain on how to react. So at that time, a lot of things were coming down. There was nothing to do, and places were closed. So we were open. We were an essential service, and we said, are you our friend? And they said yes. And I said, okay, let's give you some food. So it's just the communities came together and started sharing food. Is kind of where that inspiration came, and it continues to spread. Like I tell people, we're a community first, and then we share food.
Right. And so, Nicole, tell me a little bit, for those that have not visited Van Cleet Kill, and I have many times, it's just a wonderful community. Tell us about the community itself, because from what you're describing, incredibly supportive community, isn't it?
It's very supportive, very close-knit. We have all walks of life come in and out of our community. People who walk through our doors that are in our community, we know we're all on a first-name basis. I, unfortunately, but fortunately, wasn't born in this community. And I've been told by many locals that it takes about 3 generations to be considered a local. So I was like, well, good thing we have a community program. I can fast track my way into that program. So it's very close knit. A lot of beautiful people.
Yeah. Tell me, so you're helping out the community. I believe it's like about $25, and customers can fill their bag with produce until it's overflowing. How are you able to do that and offer that?
So we seek out different suppliers, trying to get the best prices. During the growing season, we do work with local farmers. We try to go and get anything that if they have an abundance. We have even people with gardens that have an abundance to say, hey, can we come and donate cucumbers? We have an excess this year. Absolutely. And what we'll do is we'll barter. We'll say, okay, well, we can trade you a bag of tropicals that we can't necessarily get here in Canada. So it's a great way to barter and help each other out as a community.
What has the feedback been in that relationship with local farmers? Tell me about that.
A lot of local farmers that we do work with are really happy because not only are they getting help with us buying their produce, we also have little to no waste, because what we do, if we have an item that comes in, because not every item that comes in is a perfect item, so we have stages of waste management in our policy, which starts with, we'd grab the bag, and then after that, if it's not good enough that we wouldn't want to put it on the shelves, but it's still savable, we have a rescue bin, so people can take out of the rescue bin for free. And then the last stage would be food that goes to our local farmers for their pigs and their chickens and all of their livestock. So we have livestock feed. So now we are able to help feed their livestock for free, and we have just this never-ending circle of supporting each other.
What a great example. It reminds me of a conversation my wife and I had after we had gone to an all-inclusive in Mexico, and you're just looking at, the buffets and just how much food waste there must be, and, how they should try to figure out a program where you can take that food, right, and do as you're just describing, right, help feed farm animals and, just make this so much more sustainable. My understanding too is you have a second location planned. Is that right?
Yes, in Cornwall. We just actually have an update on that. We received in yesterday the last inspection out of the process of getting our business license is our house inspection. So we're really, really close to getting everything set up to be able to open up in Cornwall, and we're excited to announce those grand opening details soon.
Any reason behind Cornwall in particular, why you chose that as the second location?
Cornwall, we had reached out to us. We started in Martintown, and they are continuing a food share program. So we're really excited to have been able to be the inspiration behind the little market there that's now serving Martintown. And it just turned out that they wanted to continue, and simultaneously Cornwall reached out to us and said, hey, we'd really like you in our area. There's a need. And we have some directors on our board that are absolutely, they have a heart for Cornwall because they're born and raised and there. So it just kind of all worked out together. We're happy to go wherever we can. We can't be everywhere at once. So we're excited to, we're working really hard at putting a program together where we can supply a team to go out to anyone who's willing and wanting to put the work into this type of program to learn how to do it in their own communities. So we want to make sure that we're focusing on sharing and teaching because food inflation is at a rise, and it doesn't look like it's going down anytime soon. So if we can teach communities to do the same thing as us, we're happy to do so.
Nicole, what a great initiative. Congratulations to yourself and your entire team and, everybody else that has been supporting you. This is what a great feel-good story to end the show with today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. That's Nicole Jalbert. She's the president of Arcs Harvest, and you can, of course, find out more information about them online. Perhaps, something to consider in different areas in our community here in the city of